here's your host, Kev Baker.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another live broadcast of the Kev Baker Show, right here on your number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com, where we say that silence is consent and we try to give you the best of protection from deception. And of course, I'm coming to you from Smart City, Glasgow. We're going all the way around the world, from America to Australia and just about everywhere in between, thanks to Chris and Cherie Geo, the brains and the beauty behind TFRlive.com. Now today, a big warm welcome to the bigger audience. We're also going out on YouTube because we have got a very special broadcast indeed. Today we're going to be getting into one of the UFO stories that, in my opinion, could be one of the most significant in our lifetime. Yet it may be a UFO story that many of you have never heard anything about. We're going to go back to the days leading up to and the day of February the 26th, 2016, and approximately 10 minutes of time that changed one of our guests' lives forever. We're going to be talking to Caz Clarke and Gari Jones. Now, Caz Clarke is somebody who was a witness to what will be known as the Pentyrch UFO incident. We're going to hear all about that today, the days building up to the event itself and the subsequent hassle and everything that's happened since then until now. And it's all ongoing. And we've also got the leading researcher into the case here today as well, Gari Jones. He has done some absolutely brilliant investigations into what I claim, and I stand by this, it could well be the most significant UFO story of our time. So I'm not going to waste any time today because we've got a brilliant presentation to get into. And to do that, let's introduce Gari and, of course, Caz. Welcome to the show, guys. It's great to have you here today. And thank you both for your time. Let me just say it's long overdue, both of you guys being here on the show. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've both got to say today. So Caz, I'll come to you first. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm really looking forward to giving you the chance, the opportunity to tell this bigger audience, because we go out on TalkStream Live, TFR Live, we're on YouTube today. I want as many people as possible to hear your story, because this is something that we were talking about before the show, but it's a game changer, in my opinion, and it's one of the most important UFO stories that people probably haven't heard about. And if it wasn't for your bravery and your tenacity, many of us would never have heard about it. So I thank you up front beforehand, and I'm going to thank you again at the end of this broadcast, Caz, because you are one brave woman. And if it wasn't for you, none of us would have heard anything about this. So it's really nice to meet you, Caz.
Thank you. It's good to be on your show. Thank you for having me as a guest. And firstly, I want to say, I wish it was a story. And secondly, I am not the only witness, but I am the only one who will speak publicly about it. And if I wasn't threatened, I wouldn't have come forward. But they threatened my family, and that's why I'm here. And that's why I'll never stop.
And we're going to learn all about this. And Gary, I just got a quick word with you before we kind of launch into Caz's account of what happened back in 2016 and after that. But it's nice to meet you as well, brother. And thank you for the level of research and investigation you've put into this. Top notch. You're talking EMF readings. You've looked at the geological stuff. You've taken into account just about everything that the skeptics, the debunkers could shoot holes in. And it's just made this case even all the more compelling when you add it to the testimony of Caz. So thank you for doing that, Gary.
It's my pleasure, mate. I mean, I came across this case not long after it happened, but I couldn't really get involved in the actual investigations until 18 months after, when finally, after, for some reason, Caz was being blocked from my searches on Facebook and other YouTube videos, or just online, it's like I couldn't find her. I did my own investigation stuff in the beginning, I found a few things here and there, but it never really took off until we got in contact with Caz, and then even then she was reluctant and hesitant, as you can understand. But once I had an idea of what we were facing, I knew where it needed to go. So, and it just kicked off. It went into orbit, and it's been climbing ever since. And yeah, all the stuff you mentioned with the EMF, the military, the geological stuff, it just came to me from years of just watching other people do their own stuff. So I guess I got to thank the people who came before me and gave me ideas, and that I guess I'm a person who's tenacious and goes forward with wherever the investigation took me. And I can say from years now of working on this, Caz is not lying. There's no lies in this. There's absolutely nothing, and people can debunk it and claim it's a lie, but sorry, the evidence stacks up against you.
And that's it. It's stacks of evidence. Now, Gary, I know you're going to screen share here. Would you like to just dive into this part here now, and we'll get the ball rolling?
What would you like me to go into first?
Well, how would you and Caz want to do this? Caz, do you want Gary to pull the slides up, or is there something you want to say beforehand?
Well, we can go through the presentation slide by slide if you want. We can show the radar returns for the 2 aircraft that were here prior to the incident in 2016. It did start for me on the 23rd of February 2016 when I noticed a very small grey prop plane just flying low over my village. And to be honest with you, I didn't really pay any attention to it because we have RAF St Athan 14 miles away, and we have military aircraft quite regularly. It was the next day when David, one of my neighbours, came out of his house, and he wasn't very happy because he hadn't got very much sleep because this small aircraft had kept him awake all night. And it was then really that we started to notice the flight pattern of this aircraft. And I remember thinking to myself, if it goes any slower, it's going to fall out of the sky. And round it went. And then another plane would come to take its place. There were 2. One was called Snake 48. Its tail number was ZZ418. And it's a Shadow R1 aircraft, reconnaissance and surveillance, and above top secret aircraft. The other one was called Jackal 1. And its tail number was ZG996. And that too would come and take the plane's place, and the first plane, ZZ418, would fly away. And this went on day and night, continuously, day and night. And when someone's pointed a sound out to you, you kind of anticipate when that sound's going to come back. And approximately every 15 minutes, this aircraft was flying over my house. And so Wednesday night, I had a very restless night. Going into Thursday morning, the aircraft was still there. And I just remember thinking it costs an awful lot of money to keep a plane up for 24 hours a day for no particular reason, having no particular place to go. And David had emailed the Ministry of Defence about the aircraft, keeping him awake, and that it was becoming a bit of a nuisance. And the Ministry of Defence failed to respond. He also emailed Wales Online, which is our local news outlet, to inform them and ask them about these aircraft, and nobody seemed to know anything at all. In fact, we didn't get any response from anyone about these aircraft. Now, David was quite convinced that actually he thought they were watching for Russian planes. And I know that sounds outrageous, but it was only the week before, on the 18th of February 2016, that our Royal Air Force, the RAF, had turned away 2 Tu-120 Russian bombers from our airspace. And he is a bit of a plane spotter. And to be honest, he was expecting to see some kind of real dogfight or some escorting of aircraft away from our airspace. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. We decided that if the aircraft were still there later that evening, that we would go out and watch with them, because clearly they were watching for something, and we didn't know what. I had no belief in UFOs at all. I had no interest in UFOs at all. It got to about 2 o'clock in the morning, in the early hours, and I was just about to go back into my house. I was freezing cold. We'd been stood in my garden for hours around the fire pit. But to be honest, I was just a little bit bored of watching this plane. But that by this time was starting to fly figure 8 patterns and coming over my house approximately every 7 minutes. I got to my back door and I heard what I thought was a missile coming. And it was really loud, like that whistly, whirring sound that you get from a missile. And I'd run back out to the back of my garden where David was still standing and looked up to see this enormous plane go over the top. And David immediately exclaimed, "That's an E3 Sentry plane." Well, I had no idea what that meant at the time. But because this plane had turned up, we decided to watch a bit longer. And I have to explain a little bit about where I live. In Pentyrch, I live near the top of a mountain. And you can see in every direction but north, because that's where the actual peak of the mountain is. And it's just rolling fields that go off, that ebb away from you like a green patchwork quilt, only segmented by trees and hedgerows. And this big E3 Sentry plane started to circle. Not small circles. We estimated it took around 5 minutes for this plane to go around once. And David said, well, perhaps it's taxiing for the airport. This is the actual NATO E3 Sentry that was there that night. In fact, the RAF had another one further west of here. Why they need 2 E3 Sentries, I don't know. But we watched this plane, and 7 times it circled. And David said perhaps it's taxiing for the airport, but the only airport that would be large enough to accommodate a plane of that size was Cardiff International Airport, which is closed at night and where you wouldn't expect to see an E3 Sentry plane. On the 7th time that it went around, one red light became visible high above the trees behind my house. And there's nothing behind my house except farmland that ebbs away from you. So I'd called for Donna, one of my other neighbours who'd been watching with us that night, and she got into her house to make hot drinks for us all. And David and I jumped over the small green fence and ran to the gate, the 5-bar gate that overlooks the farmland, to get an unobstructed view of what was going on. And one red light turned into 3 red lights in a triangle formation that turned out to be the very pinnacle of a huge pyramid craft. He came in sideways, point first, and the leading set of 6 lights on the near side edge were brighter than all the other lights, and it had red lights all the way around it. It wasn't a triangle. This was a 3-sided pyramid. The picture is 2-dimensional. I apologize for that, but we didn't have the software to do a 3-dimensional picture. Once it was fully here, because this didn't come down from outer space, this emerged through the space into our dimension. It materialized gradually.
Did it have any noise to it at all, Caz? Was there any noise that you could hear, anything like that?
No noise, no downdraft, no nothing. Absolutely silent. Nothing at all. Once it was fully here, the leading set of 6 lights on its near side edge to me was still brighter than all the rest, and turning very, very slowly anti-clockwise, it came down very slowly in the upright position. And when it had righted itself in front of us, it shot this green object out of the top like it had been fired out of a cannon, really fast. And it moved across to my left-hand side. I don't know what shape it was. It was brighter than the moonlight, and we had a full moon that night. I couldn't tell. It was just like a really bright green star about the size of a small car. And it rocked gently backwards and forwards and stayed there above the trees. I described it like a leaf falling on a still day, but it wasn't falling. It was just rocking. The E3 Sentry was still above us. By this time now, it's flying in an oval flight pattern. The pyramid is still turning very slowly anti-clockwise, and I stood on the 5-bar gate to get a better look through the bare trees. It was tilted slightly to the right-hand side, but moving backwards almost the way that it had come. And I said to David, it's landing, thinking it was coming down, when in reality the field rises there, because that is the foot of the Garth Mountain. So the land itself was coming up to meet the craft. And as it neared the ground, it released what I described as a hand of lightning. But it wasn't thin lightning. It was thick, it was fire-coloured, and all of the lights closest to the ground and on the right-hand side lit up really brightly to white, bright white orange. And you could see the whole craft. It was a pyramid. And you could see the texture of the craft. I described it like a rock face, like raw stone. You could see all the pits and falls in it. And I heard 2 military planes coming. Big C-17 aircraft, I know them to be now. They had 2 engines on each wing, flying wingtip to wingtip. And as I looked up to see them go over the top of me, when I looked back, I couldn't see the pyramid anymore. But that wasn't to say that it wasn't there, I just couldn't see it. And 2 big C-130s came from my left-hand side, and they too turned and went back behind the 2 C-17s. So you had 2 C-17s in close and 2 C-130s out wide. And between them, they took up an enormous airspace. And this green, they were flying towards this, where the pyramid craft was. And this green object has moved so quickly and in front of these aircraft, and then fired what I described as 3 really bright strobes at these aircraft, and then seemed to get excited. I described it like a happy puppy, and it was skipping and bobbing and skipping and bobbing and drawing these aircraft away from where this pyramid craft was. And I remember watching it standing on the gate, and you could see all the outlines of all the engines and the fuselages all bathed in green light of these 4 aircraft. And I watched it until I couldn't see it anymore. The E3 Sentry was still above us, flying in this oval flight pattern. And from out of the darkness, these 2 red barrel-shaped objects, I described them, again, about the size of a small car. I want to say they were made of glass, but I don't know because I didn't touch them. Smooth on the outside, and they were capped on the top, just black caps. And they moved from my right-hand side to my left. One stopped above the hedge, about 20 feet away from me, and about 20 feet up, and I just stared at it just for a few seconds, just because I wanted the details. I wanted to see, and you could see all the insides moving. And I described it like white noise on a TV screen, but it was more than that. It was like it was turning in on itself, like a cake mix, like it was alive. And then I looked to see where the other one was, and that hadn't stopped. And by that time, that was right over the top of me. And the only thing I could think to do was to wave. And I know that sounds stupid, but with all the military activity that was going on that night, I didn't want us to appear to be hostile. And this thing changed colour from tail light red to traffic light green. And I could see even clearer the insides moving, and I felt it scan me. It was the one thing that I couldn't be tested for when I took my polygraph tests, because polygraphs work on fact and not what you feel. And it was like someone had reached in and took the fear away from me, like I'd been touched by something. It was euphoric. It was it's so hard to explain, but I was so energized afterwards. It felt like I'd been touched. I can't explain it. I really can't. But it did turn my hair white overnight. And I don't know if that's the shock or something that craft did to me. But after it scanned me, the red barrel that had remained sentry the whole time was still there. The now green barrel moved off to my right-hand side and across the rooftops. And then the red barrel moved away to my left-hand side and down across the fields. And I watched it until I couldn't see it anymore. There was no noise from these things, no downdraft, no nothing. The E3 Sentry was still above us. Now, I was fixated on the bottom of the pyramid, and don't ask me why, I still don't know to this day. But David said he saw 15 or 20 of those objects come out of the top of the pyramid, so at least I know where these barrel objects came from. And David and I had walked down to what we call the second gate, which leads into the field where this pyramid had moved across, to see if there were any more of these things. But our phones did not work. People say to us, well, why don't you take video? Our phones did not work at all. And to be honest with you, whilst the pyramid was there, I stood in complete shock and awe of what I was seeing. I didn't believe it myself. And it was only when the barrels approached that I reached for my phone, only to discover that it was completely dead. And I know it wasn't before we went out. And I don't know if the E3 Sentry has something to do with that, or if these objects had something to do with that. But nothing worked. David's phone was fried completely. Anyway, we'd walked down to the second gate. And this is a mountain in Wales, in the middle of winter, in the middle of the night, and everything was pitch black. Even with a full moon, it was still dark. And the ground is uneven and slippery. We couldn't see anything else, so we walked back to the gate where we'd observed all of this. And we could hear the Apache helicopters coming. There were 3 of them, one above 2, flying from my left-hand side to my right, low across the fields with their slow pulsing red lights going out in front of them. And you could see all the hedges and the trees and all the grass being pushed flat by the force of their rotor blades on an intersection course where the green object had gone before. After they were out of sight, we even ran around to the front of the houses to see if we could get a better view up the valley, but by the time we got there, they'd already gone. We went back to my house. It felt quite surreal after this, and David and I were polar opposites to each other. I was elated, energized. I needed to tell someone, anyone that would know what to do with this information. And David was rigid, talking through gritted teeth. He was petrified, and still is today. We went back to my house. We had a hot drink. Then David went back to his house. I'd gone to bed, not that I could sleep. And I heard this enormous explosion. This wasn't a small thing. This was a kaboom. You know, Llantrisant is 5 miles away from me. And this explosion was really loud. David had heard it too, but from his house. And he was able to observe the military activity after that. Now, I don't know if you want me to continue with what happened the same morning, or if you want Gary to present some of the evidence to what was found in those fields, or if you want me to continue.
Let's get Gary in here for a moment, and then you can take a little drink of tea or a little drink of water or whatever you need, Caz.
Okay.
Gary, what we've heard so far, for people who haven't heard the story, I mean, what gets me is the fact that we've got military in and around the area, almost, it sounds like, and I'm speculating here with the evidence we've got, the information we've got, but it sounds to me like they were expecting something to turn up in that area.
Well, yeah, because I'm just trying to find the relevant slide a sec, because what I learned when I was actually getting involved more with the actual case is I was starting to suss out the military's timeline and all this. Now, this was from one of our first.
Oh, okay, so we've lost Skype. Hang on, folks, hang on. I'll call them back. I thought this might happen. Will I get the network first? I say I thought this might happen because these guys have had hassle getting the story out there. So we're back on TFR now. Let me reconnect with our special guests. Gary, there we go. We'll add Gary in. And then we'll add Caz back to the call. There we go. So let's see if we can get them back in here now. But yeah, I'm not surprised that we've had a bit of hassle now because This is one of the things about this case. These guys are getting hassled still to this day when they're talking about it. I hear two of them have come back onto the call now. Well, we've got them back.
Somebody's come in here. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that was a bit weird there. It all cut off at my end, so I've had to reconnect the call and start it again, Gary. There's the break.
KT coming in here.
There's the break right now. So I'll go to the break, and then when we come back on the other side, we'll hear more from Caz Clarke and from Gari Jones. Oh, it's going to be one of these ones, folks. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. There we go. Now we're still on YouTube. So I hope now when I go here, there we go. We've kind of got you both back there now. So for the YouTube audience out there, sometimes it looks like I'm kind of like moving the screens around. It's Gary's had a problem with screen sharing, so it only takes me a couple of seconds to resize the cameras, but it's for people watching. If you're wondering what's happening, that's why.
Can you see me okay?
Yeah, I see you okay now. I see Caz again okay. Caz, that was fantastic what you laid out there to begin with, and when we come back, I'll give it back to you, and you can give us the rest of your account.
Yeah.
I was just going to do the military thing.
A lot more.
That was weird, because the whole call got cut off. It wasn't like just one person.
Somebody was trying to call in. I got 3 or 4 in the call here. I don't know what's going on. What's happening here?
Now, there's 3 or 4 in the call, but don't worry about it, because remember, I need to add the hosts back in, so there will be a 4th one there. That's why there's a 4th person on the call. So I'll add that back in when we're going back to the network. Don't worry about that.
Shall I go straight into the military thing when we're ready?
Yeah, well, when we come back after the break, we'll probably do that. Because we're on the break from the radio right now, we've got 3 minutes. We're still on YouTube. So Caz, let me ask you, I mean, you were trying to describe what this felt like when you were being scanned. At any time when you were watching that craft, did you get a sense of fear, a sense of threatening, nothing like that?
No, nothing. Do you know, they almost felt angelic. Like, it was a really spiritual experience. And when I say I felt like I was touched, I really mean that. Like, I didn't feel afraid at all. Whatever they did to me, and they have changed certain things about me, you know, my electrodermal wave has been permanently altered. But they were not hostile at all. You know, if they were, then I certainly wouldn't be here. And neither would David, for that matter. And there is another witness in the village. And he doesn't want to come forward. I believe he's a pilot, and that might explain why he doesn't want to come forward. But he has written a statement, even though he's done that using a pseudonym. He actually wrote down what it was that he saw 9 days after the event. And, you know, I could go on. I mean, you asked me a specific question, and that's how it felt. Like they were angels of light. That's how it felt.
Wow.
But
that's his statement, by the way. I was just going to let people know that he pretty much confirms everything that Caz and Dave were talking about, that on the Wednesday he noticed an AWACS, which is another word for E3. You know, he was cleaning his car by 1 a.m. Thursday morning.
Okay, hold that thought, Gary. Hold that thought, because we're going to go back to the network in just a second here, and I'd love for you to share that for the full audience.
I'll have the screen shut off a sec, okay? There we go.
I'll have to go back to this one now. There we go. Right, I'll bring us back to the network. Here we go. Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second part of today's Kev Baker show with our special guests, Gari Jones and Caz Clarke. Now, Caz is one of the main witnesses to the Pentyrch UFO incident. This is something that more people should be talking about, especially right now when disclosure is on most ufologist minds. We've heard all the talk in the mainstream in America about UFOs, UAPs, but we still hardly hear anything about the Pentyrch UFO incident. I thought today when I went to start preparing for this show, it'd be really easy to dig up lots of stories, lots of interviews, and be able to put together a pretty clear image of what went on. And if it wasn't for Gary and Caz providing me with all of their copious amounts of not just information, but evidence, you know, it would have been very hard for me to find out anything about this story whatsoever. And that's quite telling in this day and age. You know, everybody writes about anything on the internet. But you go and try and dig into the Pentyrch UFO story, or event, should I say, and it's very, very hard indeed. So that tells me that there's an active attempt to kind of keep this information away from the public eye. Add to that Caz's own testimony. And Gaz, you're going to share something here with us right now, a third witness statement that backs up what we're hearing from Caz and her friend Dave, right?
Yeah, this is a person who used, I'm guessing, an alias called Mike Embry, because we looked for this person before. I'll just go in there. Now, as Caz and Dave have already said about an E3 Sentry, this is his statement that was found on a website called South Wales Awakening. And you can see the date there, the 6th of March 2016. This was only like a week or so after, a week and a bit after. And it just, you know, there's the relevant points I've underlined. He says, Wednesday afternoon, I noticed an AWACS radar tracking plane, which is another word for E3 Sentry, circling our area. He was cleaning the car, and then by 1 a.m. Thursday morning, early Thursday morning, that would be the 25th of February 2016, he was getting a bit worried as to what was really happening. He fell asleep, and guess what? He was still there the next morning and into the night. So he was circling around, you know, on the Thursday. And I've got the radar returns for that one, or should I say the military plane spotters. Now, he goes on to talk about how he was walking up a Tinnacoid Road, and he was watching planes circling in the sky, and then nowhere, another plane and another plane and another plane, shall we say. He said there were now 5 large planes. This is on the early hours of Friday now, in the same circle. So the planes were circling, and this is what he says here. So I watched because I thought it was strange that a bright red pulsing light, then another and another, which formed the shape of a triangle, came down from the clouds. And it came in the middle of the circle. As it got lower, it lit up with more pulsing red lights. They said it looked very large indeed. I don't think it touched down totally, but about 10 to 12 feet from the ground, and lit up fully. And it says here, showing the full outline of it, and then it dimmed to black, and red and green orbs came from the middle of the aircraft. They started pulsing very fast, brightly and slowly, and headed. He says here that the green orb that shot up earlier, the one that Caz described as a leaf, that it started pulsing very fast and then bright and slowly headed northwest. Now, on the maps, northwest leads you into the Lantrison area. Obviously, we'll get to that later on, but I'm just going to go down here because he didn't know what he was seeing. But the reason I've underlined the red lights is because these are the more salient points. He said it was about 4 a.m. There was an almighty explosion in the distance, followed by a second about 3 seconds later. After whatever was going on, they were very involved. I've told you everything I know. As I saw, please don't contact me. It was something I would rather forget. I've seen being military involved. Don't want to be in any bother with the MOD. Thanks. Hope you get to the bottom of this. But I'll say one thing. They knew it was coming. So let me just get off of that. They knew it was coming. And I'm just going to show you something here. Hopefully I can bring it up, because I got so many slides here. The military timeline is well established. And yeah, I've done so many presentations on this. I'm just trying to find the one that confirms the E3's presence.
Now that E3, as somebody that was in the military, I would only have expected to see something like that during an exercise if it was on the scale of being multi-service. And by that, I mean something involving maybe Navy, Army, and Air Force. Navy, Army, Air Force, Army.
There it is.
So this would have been something massive. And
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say there's the confirmation of it. Look, there's his tail number. That's the plane. St. Athens, Cardiff. That was circling on Thursday night. and
Can't
in
see that.
early mornings.
Wow.
NATO right there. So, you know, this is a great resource for researchers if they ever want to establish military timelines. I mean, this clearly was there, and then people ask, what's an E3 Sentry doing there? What the hell was two of them doing there? Because
Exactly.
there seemed to be maybe at least one, but two, I'm sure, because there's a radar return for this one.
Let me come to Caz, because Caz, you live there.
Yeah.
I'm used to Wales from the military, obviously, go there doing exercises a lot. I've told that to the audience. It's not as if you would be unfamiliar with what would be normal military milling around for, say, a typical kind of exercise, or when they go there for going up the Brecons and up the Beacons, sorry. My point is that this sounds like totally something unfamiliar to me as a military guy, to see this level of activity. And for you as a local, was this totally something new to you as well? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, this never happens. Never. We have Sunnybridge, which is 40 miles away from here, which is Ministry of Defence land. And if they want to go and blow themselves up, they're quite welcome to do so there, because it is their land. But when we asked via a Freedom of Information request why they chose this area, we were told it had special land features. But it doesn't have any special land features, no different to what Sunnybridge would be, let alone doing this at 4 o'clock in the morning over a residential area next to a hospital, and the number of assets they had in the air that night. I mean, I've told you about 5 aircraft, or 8 if you include the 3 Apache helicopters. But they had over 20 military helicopter gunships, Chinook helicopters, 3 of those that I know of, 2 E3 Sentries, reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft, let alone the C-17s, the C-130s, the fast jets. They had a J-2 lifter on standby, and we do believe they had an aircraft carrier, because the military jets were not normal jets, they were Navy jets. And I only know this from the evidence, but a military exercise of that size would never happen over a residential area in the early hours of the morning. And this was not an exercise.
Now, Caz, you came into contact with some military personnel in the days following what happened, didn't you? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's skipping ahead a little, because I haven't told you about
Okay. No. Let's take it the order we need to go then. Let's go the order you need to go.
Well, the next morning, which was the same day, just a couple of hours later, when I discovered my hair was completely white, and David had come over to my house, and Donna, one of my other neighbours, had come to my house, and another friend had come over. And we decided immediately we were going to go over to the field where we saw this hand of lightning come out of this pyramid, expecting to see burn marks on the ground. But there weren't any burn marks, just that everything was dead. It looked like something had sucked all of the chlorophyll out of all the plant life. All the bushes were dead, the grass was dead, everything was dead. And it was snowing in that one field. And it wasn't snowing in the surrounding fields. We walked the entire perimeter, and it was just snowing in the one field. And there was one area that seemed to be warm compared to the rest of the field. It was like something was still there, but you couldn't see it. It was quite spooky in that it felt like you were being watched. And the texture of the snow in that field was wrong. It looked and resembled a hailstone, but when you picked it up and squeezed it, its texture was wrong. It was spongy almost. You could squeeze it and create a perfect circle on your thumb and watch it dissolve slowly. It was almost plasticky. It was weird. We'd gone back to my house, and David had said that he was looking on the internet, and he'd said that Wells Online had put out this cover story of a military exercise that had kept residents awake. And I didn't know you weren't supposed to talk about UFOs. So I put a comment underneath straight away to say, well, I can categorically assure you that was no exercise. What they were chasing last night were not planes. I will take a lie detector for anyone, anywhere, but what I saw last night will stay with me for the rest of my life. And I had two people, debunkers, I think you call them. One called himself the Smoking Man, and the other one called himself Agent Fox Mulder, because they really do like their play on words, and both of these people used fake Facebook profiles. And one of them said, oh, laugh out loud, you know, good one. And I like a bit of sarcasm, me, so I was like, yeah, it was good. In fact, you may have chased and shot down the green object, but you left all the others here, didn't you? And then Agent Fox Mulder got involved. So I'd said to him, well, when do you use live ammunition over a residential area at 4 o'clock in the morning? You know, the answer is never, never. Wells Online removed all of the comments, and they're only available now via the screenshots that Gary was able to take. And from there, Gary had tried to find me and couldn't for some reason, because I do believe that I've been blocked. There is a deliberate cover-up going on even today. A lot of comments on there were from people that lived in the Llantrisant area that reported the helicopters that were circling for hours over the Llantrisant Common, and that troops are on the ground there conducting some kind of search. And so this became my point of research at the other end, because I wanted to know what had happened to this green object. And so we drove to Llantrisant Common, and all of the metal that had been on the common for years, you know, old bikes and a bit of old car over there, you know, maybe a fridge or something, had all been neatly stacked up along the roadside. There had clearly been a meticulous metal search that had gone on that night in the early hours of the morning. And I saw two people walking their dog, and I approached them, bearing in mind this is the morning after the night before. And they explained to me where the Chinook helicopters had landed, where the troops were, where the helicopters had circled, how the first explosion was an air explosion, and how the second explosion sounded like something had hit the ground in Smilog Woods. Well, I wasn't from that area, and so I asked where Smilog Woods was located, and felt quite stupid really when they pointed to this enormous wooded hill that rises behind the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And if you look at the wooded hill from the hospital side, it looks like a giant W, but the right-hand valley is lower than the left-hand valley. And this is why I believe that green object was under intelligent control. That if, as we now believe, they incapacitated that craft over the common and it was losing altitude, you'd want to make that right-hand valley to clear the mountain. But unfortunately for them, on the other side of the valley, there's a hill that rises in front of them. So we immediately went to Llantrisant Forest, or Smilog Woods. And because I knew the trajectory of the green object, it wasn't long before we found the debris trail. And there were 60-foot trees. This is Forestry Commission. There are no branches on the lower parts of the trees. Only the canopies are actually covered in any green at all. 60-foot trees snapped mid-trunk, as far as the eye could see. Debris lay left and right of us in a perfectly straight line. Well, it was quite difficult getting through the forest, and we decided that we would go back and tell the others what we had found, and a plan was made to go up the very next morning and follow the debris trail through to its end and find the impact crater, which is exactly what we did. When we got to the end of this debris trail, there are 6 trees snapped mid-trunk, 20 feet in the air. A pungent smell of burning rubber or something like similar to burning rubber in the air. There were burn marks on the surrounding trees that had been left standing. Only the burn marks were white, not black. And there were scrape marks on all the surrounding trees. One of the trees had a 2 foot by 1 foot wound And the wood, this is living wood, had curled outwards towards you, implying something very big and very heavy had been dragged up against this tree. Excuse me. A moment.
And these trees, for people listening on the radio, I mean, you're talking about the tops of them just being snapped off. Like something's literally gone through there at great velocity and great force. Gary, you've actually collected some really good evidence from people on mountain bikes in the time leading up to this. Listen, hats off, man, for even thinking about doing that. But everyone's got like a dash cam or a mountain bike camera nowadays, and you've clearly shown the time leading up to that those trees were okay, right?
Yeah, I'll see if I can bring that up as we go along. But what I came to the idea was, yeah, as you suggested, is as you just stated, I should say, is that when I actually wanted to see if I could figure out when these trees were okay and when they were not, were they snapped beforehand, or is Caz just finding something that happened afterwards? And I decided it would be a good idea. That I know people like to take GoPro helmets, video cameras of themselves as they go down the tracks. And I just started going through YouTube and seeing if I could find a couple. Now, I started going through a lot of the different videos, and it took me like 2 weeks to sort of put it all together. Literally, I was sitting on my computer for 2 weeks finding them all, and I found some people who had actually ridden past that area, and the closest I could get to it was around the 21st, 22nd of January, and the trees were just fine. And I got someone who was riding his bike the day before, on the 24th, 25th maybe. He said they got a ramp there, a pallet land ramp, they call it, that they jumped down over that particular area, and they went up there the next day, 26, and the ramp had been smashed. Something had gone in there and completely destroyed the ramp. These thick pallet wooden ramps. And I'm trying to find it for you, but unfortunately I can't find it right now. That's a shame. But yeah, I spent like 2 weeks at my computer trying to figure out where all these people had gone down. So it proved that those trees were perfectly fine, at least up until the 22nd or 21st of February 2016.
Yeah, I believe for every tree that object hit, it slowed down. So what remains of the impact site to the untrained eye might not look like very much at all. But when you have 6 trees in a very small location, all snapped off at the same height, it takes an enormous amount of energy to snap a tree, just one tree. But to snap 6 in that one spot, I don't actually think that object touched the ground. But it took out at least 100 trees in a straight line into the impact site. It was snowing at the crash site, as it was snowing where this hand of lightning, where this pyramid had come in, but only in those 2 locations and nowhere else. And there was no snow forecast. In fact, the sky was blue. How can you have snow falling from blue sky? But we did. The Forestry Commission, in its wisdom, decided to fell all of the trees that were damaged. And we did ask them via Freedom of Information request why they did this. And they told us that it was Larch disease. Well, Larch disease has become quite a problem, not just in Wales, but across the world, really. And it is quite a serious, harmful pathogen that is categorized as risk 1, high risk, and has infected up to 150 different species of plant and tree now, and seems to be spreading. So they have very strict protocols on how to deal with this stuff. They have to wear coveralls on their bodies and on their feet. They have to wash all of their equipment. They have to do what they call a sanitized felling, which means removing absolutely everything. But what they did in Smirlog Woods was nothing like that. So we asked why it was that they did not perform a sanitized felling. And Gary, I don't know if you have the screenshots ready, but this Freedom of Information request that we sent in, we've only just got the answers to. Now, they're supposed to leave the land free and fallow for a minimum period of 3 years, but they replanted the area within 12 months. So we asked them via Freedom of Information why they didn't do a sanitized felling, and they told us, I can't see your screen, Gary.
Oh, okay, I'll bring the large one up. Oh.
I can see it here right enough. I can see it. It's going out to the... There you go.
It's okay, I just need to find the larger ones or so. Go on, keep talking, Caz. I'll find it now.
Okay, I can't see your screen at all. Anyway, they said that they'd received a notification from the tree health, or what do they call it, Gary?
Natural Tree Health Inspector or something like that.
That's right. That this plant. Oh, come on! You'll have to help me because I can't see it.
Sorry, I'm having a little technical glitch here. Can you see that?
No, I can't see your screen at
She's
all.
not seen your screen at all, Gary, so... I'm seeing it here. It's coming through Skype, but...
We should be on this. I'm going to stop sharing a sec.
I can only see Gary. But it's a plant health... what do they call it, Gary, please? Plant health...
Tree inspector, they call it.
But they have to issue this plant health notification on the land if larch disease is found. Well, under the Forestry Commission's own rules, you're not allowed to fell larch-infected trees between the 1st of October and the 30th of June. And the reason this is because it is impossible to detect whether or not a tree is suffering with larch disease during that time, because larch is a deciduous tree, so they have to wait until the foliage starts to come through to be able to identify this problem. And yet they felled the trees in December and January. Now, another reason why not to do this is because they have this biosecurity, and it's in place so that these infected trees don't get mixed with other trees where it can spread the pathogen further.
Do you want me to read it out, Caz? Sorry.
Yeah,
Do you want me to read it out what it says?
Yes.
Okay, I was hoping you could see it, but the question 2, why you didn't perform a sanitized felling as set in the policy, felled trees remain to this day. Now, there's a lot of other information on there, but the key point that Caz is talking about is this. When operating in this zone, this is the Natural Resource Wales. When operating in this zone, current biosecurity guidance should be followed. Most management operations that occur in the CDZ1 will be harvesting of infected material. Movement of the material from site and processing is regulated for biosecurity purposes and to prevent the spread of Phytophthora ramorum through this pathway. And then, unlike elsewhere in Wales, there is no time limit on these operations.
Right. No time limit applies to them here for this forest, but it does for the rest of Wales and the rest of the United Kingdom. But yet here, in Smilock Woods, it doesn't apply. Now, the next thing was a plant health notice would have been issued as question 5. Is it, Gary? Can you read that,
Yeah,
please?
Plant Health Regulator is the person that we were talking about. Question 5 says, why did Natural Resources Body for Wales replant the area within 18 months if larch disease was indeed present? And it talks about the answer above, but this is what we were talking about here. We were informed in our notification letter from the Plant Health Regulator that the site had been inspected by the tree health specialist and that the indications were that larch disease was present.
Okay, so we looked, because a plant health notice has to be placed. And we've gone back and found, can you put the maps up?
I will get them up now, yeah.
Of the plant health notices that have ever been found in or presented in Wales for the last decade. So not some of them, all of them.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if you can see it, Caz, but Kev, can you see it all right?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Okay, this is taken from the PDF file that Caz found, and these are the color-coded dots for the years that they have from 2010 to 2018. The 2016, 2017 are sort of like reddish orange dots. Now you can't see it clearly on this one, but this little area here is where the Royal Glamorgan and Smilock Woods is. Now I'm going to bring it up a little more closely. Kaz, I'm zoomed in now where you were talking about the A4119.
The A4119 is the road on which the Royal Glamorgan
Now
Hospital
hold that
is
thought
situated.
because we're right on the break on the radio, so we'll be back in 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere. You won't miss anything. 1 hour down, 1 hour to go. We'll be right back.
I need to sort this screen out because I can't see a thing.
There you
I
go.
don't know what's going on. I got screen share on.
I can see it. This end, Kaz, I'll try and I'll kick you off
All
the
I can
call
see
and
is
then I'll
Gary.
call you back because it must be working if I'm seeing it. So it's got to be at your end. So I'll hang up on you and then I'll call you back, okay?
Okay.
There we go. Just as good we can get this sorted out during the break and then hopefully Kaz will be able to see what we're talking about. There
Can
we
you
go.
see it?
I still see it, but I mean, it's Kaz that can't see it, so I'm just calling her back. We'll wait to see if she can see it. Hopefully she'll pick up.
It's a bit strange. You should be able to see that.
There we go. There's Kaz back in the call. Can you see it now, Kaz?
I can see Gary. Oh, yes, I can see. Yes,
Yeah.
I can see
There
it.
you go.
Fantastic. Okay. Shall I continue? Or...
Well, we need to wait 3 minutes till we go back to the radio. So
Okay.
if we just kind of chill out, if you want to get a little drink or anything just now, Kaz, that's fine.
Yeah, I nearly soaked on my other one, which is why I had to...
Yeah, I'll need to
Well,
nip
I-
away and get a drink at some point as well. But Gary, talking to if I come to you here, we've had could you show the audience the trees again, like pictures of the trees if you
Yeah,
could?
hopefully I've still got them up because I'm going between.
Because this is some of the, I mean, this is like some of the best evidence that we've had. Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about there. And I mean, that's something at great force that's gone through there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is what people need to understand. That tree alone is about 35, 40 feet in length, going on a diagonal path there. That's its trunk. And if you look at it, it doesn't go like that. You know, if you snap something, you know, you get little strands that snap. You know, you ever snapped a twig and you get those little broken strands on the end of it? This doesn't have that. But it's just completely, someone's gone through there, boom, and, you know, just blown it out from the inside or just smashed right through it and created this sort of like jarred or, you know, sharded, broken mess. And you can see from, you know, that side there, look, there it is again. Can you see it? You there, Kev?
Yeah, well, he's grabbing coffee. There's two trees in that picture. There's one straight down and there's one on the diagonal as well.
Yeah,
And
this
they're
one
both,
here.
Yeah, they're both healthy trees.
Yeah,
And then there's 6.
Going over there.
It's very difficult to get the scale of this, and it doesn't look like much. But
Well, there's you and
David.
who's that? That's Dave or Steve or whatever. And yeah, they're broken up around this area. I mean, you can, you know, there's the burn marks on those trees. Look, I'm just gonna knock the screenshot off because I want to find those bicycle things. For some reason, I can't find the file right now. It's strange. Normally, I just find it instantly. Silly, you know. All right, let's have a look here.
Are we on a break here? Or
I don't know. Maybe he has knocked us off. I don't know.
no, he's gone to grab coffee, I think.
There we go. I'm back. Did we lose Kaz again?
Well, I'm still here.
Your camera's gone off. I'm going to bring back the network,
Oh, hang
guys.
on.
Here we go.
I'll see if I can... Hang on.
Okay, I'm going to bring back the network. Here we go. There we go. I see you now. There we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into the second hour of today's Kev Baker Show on tfrlive.com. We're also going out on TalkStream Live, Paranormal Radio app, and we are also on YouTube today because we are talking to Caz Clarke and Gari Jones about the Pentyrch UFO incident. This was February the 26th back in 2016, and Caz witnessed something quite miraculous that changed her life forever that night, and we're finding out all about it here today. Gary is one of the leading researchers that's got the documents relating to this case. By that I mean he's done the Freedom of Information requests, and we'll also be hearing about some of the scientific evidence and investigations that Gary has been doing as we proceed on the show. I'm going to come back to you just now, Caz, because just before the break we were talking about the tree situation, the biohazard situation. Gary had a map up, so I'm going to hand it right back to you guys.
Okay, Gary, if you could put the map up again, that would be amazing.
Yes, I will, yeah. Let me just, hopefully you'll see it this time. Got it?
Fantastic. Yes, I see it. Okay, in the centre of the map, you'll see a road, and it's called the A4119. And it's on this road that the Royal Glamorgan Hospital is situated, and Smilog Woods is directly behind the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. Now, these are all the plant health notices that have been served in Wales for the last 10 years. 10 years. And Gary, if you could move to the next slide for me, please.
Which one do you want, Caz?
Where it shows the location of the hospital and Smilog Woods.
Yep. Right here.
Right there. And there has never, repeat, never been a plant health notice served on Llantrisant Forest, aka Smilog Woods, in the last decade, let alone in 2015 or 2016 or 2017. There has never been one. And they said, National Resources for Wales and their Freedom of Information requests that we have just received, that they had said health notice. But this is from the Welsh government themselves. And there has never been one served on Smilog Woods. Ever. That is a blatant lie. So there never was Larch disease in Smilog Woods. They took those trees down because they were damaged. That is the only reason they took them down. No Larch disease in Smilog Woods. Ever. So I think we can put that one to rest.
And if Kevin just wants to let me, you asked me about the videos I was going to show you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found the file, sorry. It was hiding somewhere in another one. I got so many things, it's impossible to keep track of them. But this video was published on the 21st of February 2016. Llantrisant Downhill Smilog. I don't know what MTB is. That's pallet land anyway. I'm just going to screen across. That is the actual area. Do you see these bent ones, look?
Yeah.
Now, they don't do that. That wasn't because of what happened. Apparently, I found out if you plant these trees too close together, they cause a natural bend because they can't get enough room to grow.
Yeah,
there is a word for it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so I mean, for people that see the video, and when I first seen it, I did wonder.
That's the area right there.
Yeah, I wondered about the bent trees, but I'm glad you cleared that up because that's actually something that you can see. You can see beforehand, but something you can't see beforehand is broken trees. You don't see any of the damage that Caz.
I just want to make your viewers aware, those who can see anyway, what they're looking at. That's the path that Caz and her friends would have walked around. Look, it's just down there. All that area behind it was felled. This area here is where the broken trees are, but not right now. Right? You can see there's two good ones there, look, and there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. There's nothing wrong with them. But just find a previous picture I had. There they are again, look. I luckily turned their head just enough so I could see it.
Yep.
And then, obviously, this is the 21st of February, 5-6 days before. And that's how they looked on the 26th, 27th.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, Caz, where do you want to go next? Because I know there's still significant parts to this story that we need to get to,
yeah.
right?
Oh, I just realized something, actually. Where is that previous picture? If you see this one here, look. Let me bring it up, because I made... See this one here, look? See that little tree there? Caz, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, someone stuck that there, right? So, if we come back to this one, there's that tree again. Look what happened to them.
Snapped off.
Snapped off, yeah.
Yep.
This is where it was. All the ones that it was supporting was snapped off. Look, you know. I don't know if people can understand
see that there. Yep.
There it is, but there. You know.
But there they are in their full. So one picture shows the full tree, and then the other one just shows the remnants. Yeah.
Some of them are snapped at the top, and some of them are snapped at the bottom. And you know, there's no explanation for it. Those trees are not. You are not going to take an axe to those trees and chop it down in one go, let alone 6.
Yeah.
Or 7 or whatever.
So we're going to come back to get some of the investigation that you done, Gary. But Caz, if we now move forward, where do you want to go next?
Okay. Well, after my comments on Wales Online, I was contacted by a reporter from Wales Online who'd asked me to contact her. This is on my Facebook page. Regarding my comments to do with the military that night, which I did and instantly regretted, because I was interrogated. This wasn't, you know, did I have any footage? And they weren't after the real story. They were after what I knew and who I'd spoken to and how I'd spoken to people. And I was told to stay silent. And I did. I mean, this interrogation went on for at least an hour. And I don't intimidate easily, but when I got off the phone, I was physically shaking. So I didn't speak to anyone about it for 18 months. And in that time, Gary had tried to find me. That's the comment that I had from Jessica Morgan Flynn, a Wales Online reporter. And that's her phone number if anybody'd like to ring her and ask her if she interrogated anybody else that day.
Mm.
But it was almost as if the questions were already laid out for her by someone else. Anyway, shortly after the event, we had some very strange men and women come and camp in the fields here. And I didn't know they were here initially because they camped behind a thicket of trees that's not visible from my house. And I only really knew that they were here because of my local Pentyrch hub. And different residents had put comments up to say that they'd been given different stories about who these people were. One person had said that they were a fracking survey team, and that didn't go down at all well in the village. And another person said that they were Vodafone. Well, that tweaked my curiosity, and I wanted to know who they were. So I'd gone over with a friend under the guise of taking my dog for a walk. And as we got to the gate, we saw 2 soldiers wearing digital camos, carrying real guns with live ammunition, walking towards us. And one of them told us that they were doing a military exercise down in the fields if we saw anything funny going on. And I said, well, you need guns for that, do you? And he said, well, yes, we do, you know, and marched off. So my friend and I had walked down the track and turned left into the field where they were camped. And I've always said, you can take the man out of the army, but you can't take the army out of the man. And all of their tents were in perfect straight lines. Every string was in a perfectly straight line. It was like they'd gone into some outdoor activities shop and said, we'll have 4 of those tents and 4 of those and 2 of those, you know? And they desperately tried to behave like civilians, but in no shape or form were they. Initially, I started to walk around the perimeter of the field. And it wasn't long before I thought, no, I want to get closer. So I've cut across the field, and a big dog has come charging out of one of the tents. Now, on this photograph that you can see now, you have all the bivvies, and then behind that, they have an equipment tent. Behind that, they had a canteen tent. And behind that, they had the tent where the commanding officer sat. They also had another tent behind that, but you couldn't see what was in it because they had it toggled up. Anyway, this dog, that I now know to be some kind of pit bull type dog, had started to circle us. And I asked my friend to pick my little dog up because I didn't want her to get bitten. And I shouted to the 2 men that I could see in camp and said, "You're no country boys, are you?" And I had an answer like, "What?" I said, "This is lambing season. It's nearly lambing season." I said, "Put your dog on a lead. The farmer's got a shotgun and he's not afraid to use it." So because they'd answered me, I'd gone, that was my in, if you like. I wanted to know who these people were. So we'd walked into the camp, and that's how come I've managed to take some covert photographs. Because they did make you feel exceptionally uncomfortable. And I asked them who they were and what they were doing, and they told me that they were Vodafone doing field research. Well, with that, I've gone home, and Donna, one of my other neighbours, had said to me, "Didn't you go down further? They're doing something in the fields." So Donna's gone down to the fields and taken photographs of them, and they were wearing white forensic suits, doing a fingertip search in the fields where the pyramid first came in. Because, as I said, it didn't come down from outer space. And these people behaved very strangely. If anyone got close to them, they would stand up and stop what they were doing and stare at you until you were out of sight. And in one of the photographs there, you can actually see one of them is still wearing his forensic suit. Excuse me. At the end, they had these large laptop-type devices. I'm sorry, I'm going to cough.
When I was in the army, right, I was in the Royal Signals. Now, I never remember any details at the time, and I'm talking about mid-90s. It was just at the time when the military were handing over the frequencies for the mobile phone network. All that stuff was just getting going. And even back then, I don't remember any like details where we had to go out in a company, like mobile phone companies, to any parts of the UK as some kind of like on-site protection. That's almost ridiculous. That sounds totally alien to anything that's remotely like I'd done in the army, Caz. It's not right. Now, there's another part of this as well that I find really compelling, and I really seized upon when I seen it. The soldiers you spoke to, they had the gun on them. Now there was something different about this gun, because any time I went to Wales, it wasn't to fight in any real war, folks. It was simulated drills. So when you do that, you fire blanks. Only the British military, when they're firing blanks, we've got this thing called a BFA. It's a daft yellow thing that you screw into the top, and it's like a metal, if you think of a silencer on the end of your gun, but just this metal contraption. And that's something that was missing that day, right?
Yes, on both of the weapons that they were carrying identical guns. There were no yellow caps in the end of these guns. And these guns didn't look like they'd been dragged around on exercise anywhere. They were absolutely pristine, like they were brand new, like they'd been stripped and oiled that morning. That's what they looked like. And they certainly didn't look as if they'd ever had a yellow cap in the end of them.
Did they have the magazine in it? Did you notice if it had the magazine in it?
Oh, it had a magazine in it, yeah. Yeah, both of them did.
See, that tells me that's live weapons, and don't get me wrong, there's live firing drills that do take place. However, not when you're saying that you're just there like working with Vodafone or something, you know?
Right.
Well, I was just going to say, I pulled up a slide here, I found it. This is Dave, the other witness statement. He was to get behind that tent. Sorry, Caz, you said something behind the tent with all the equipment and stuff?
Yeah.
And it just says, Dave, yeah, this is one of the bits of his statement. He says, took a walk over to the fields to have a look. There were tents and a lot of equipment there. They had satellite dishes, huge aerials, and a lot of other tech with screens and wires. I did try and ask this one bloke what they were doing there, but he was very hesitant to tell me anything and kept looking around behind him as if he was making sure nothing was in my sight. After realizing this man didn't want to speak, I walked on, I looked back, and he was starting to make sure if I had left the field. They arrived in Enterprise vans and Land Rovers. They were there for the best part of a week. You could hear them calling out in the middle of the night, as you can hear a pin drop here.
Yeah. They tried to behave like civilians, but they weren't. They searched the field where the pyramid came in first. And I think it's like with anything that traverses through space, it will drag something with it. and I believe that's what they were looking for. But they had 3 of those laptop-type devices, and they were quite large, like twice the width of a normal-sized laptop in a steel case. They were operating one in the commander officer's tent, and I'll tell you a little bit about him in a moment. And he looked over the top of his glasses and closed the case. They really didn't want you to see what they were doing. They had one in the fields with them where they were searching the fields. And you can see the guy at the back wearing the forensic suit there in the photograph is operating one of those. And they had a 3rd one on top of the Jeep at the end of the trail. And they had satellite dishes and aerials. They had a tarpaulin up so that you couldn't see what they were doing.
So they're triangulating something.
I believe a satellite, yes.
Yeah, when you've got 3 points like that, that's triangulation going on.
Right. And they really didn't want anyone to see what they were doing. And as I said before, as you walk past, every single one of them would stand up and stare at you until you were out of sight. They wouldn't move. They'd just stand there and stare at you. Somebody's recently made comments on my local Pentyrch hub that they had armed guards on the gate. They had 2 sentries on the gate. And that even though they didn't stop him from going in to take his dog for a walk, again, everybody would stand up and stare at him until he was out of sight. This is really bizarre behaviour from people that were supposed to be in Vodafone. Well, later that evening, we decided that we'd go over to the fields and skywatch. And I saw one of the men that I'd seen in one of the tents earlier that day, and he was putting out nightsticks, you know, those snap sticks that glow in the dark, around the campsite. And he noticed us, and he came over to us and asked us what we were doing. So I said we were skywatching. Are you here because of the UFO? And he immediately said, no, we don't know anything about that. But he didn't ask any questions about it either, and I thought that was odd. So he said that he was security for the camp, and it wasn't long before the rest of the group had come back. Now, I don't know where they'd been, whether they'd been out to be debriefed somewhere, but he's opened the gate and allowed them all into the fields, and they've all come in with their jeeps and their vans and things, and they've all gone back to the campsite. And a few moments later, he's come back and he said, will you be here for long? And I said, well, I will be here for as long as the sky is clear. And he said, well, my commanding officer's not going to like that. So I looked at my friends and I said, I didn't know Vodafone had a commanding officer. And we laughed. So he said, well, I'll have to go and get him. He said, he'll want to speak to you. I said, fine. I said, go and get him. So he did. And this very angry, stocky, fit man came over towards us, quite angry. And he said, you're trespassing. I said, no. He said, yes. Have you got permission to be here? I said, I don't need permission to be here. That's a public footpath. And he got a bit more animated and pointed to this public footpath and said, no, you know, that's a public footpath. And I said, are you joking? I said, that's like 12 feet away from me. I said, the only thing the country code desires me to do is take my rubbish home. Well, with that, I do remember what he said now, and he was talking about identification or something. I said, I don't need to show you anything. And what I didn't realise was, and I do now, I had post-traumatic stress from this event. And my emotions were very erratic, and I would go from 0 to 100. And I immediately ripped into this man, and I shouted in his face, and this is what I said. We fought 2 world wars so we'd have the right to be free. And as long as I'm not breaking the law or hurting anybody, we got a goddamn right to be here. And he stood quite shocked that somebody had shouted back at him. And he said, I admire your passion. And I said, well, it's not passion. You know, something's been lost along the way. You know, they're there to serve us. And yet all of a sudden now, we, the public, are the ones that are in the way. That can't be right. And this man turned tail and went back to his camp, and I gave him something to think about. We're only able really to sort of stay for maybe half an hour after that because the rain came. So we went back to my house. But we now know that these people were military, even though they pretended to be a fracking survey team in Vodafone. Via Freedom of Information request, we asked the Ministry of Defence, who were these people in the fields? And the Ministry of Defence told us, we hold no information within the scope of your request. Okay, next question. What were they doing in the fields? Section 26, not in the public interest. Well, only the military can hide behind Section 26. So that answered our first question. But they've contradicted themselves so many times. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Why were the soldiers carrying automatic weapons? Withheld under Section 26. Why were the military in the fields of Pentyrch? Information withheld under Section 26. If this was just an exercise, why weren't the residents notified? Information withheld under Section 26. When we asked, why did you send a cleanup crew after the event? What were they searching for? And why were they carrying guns? The Ministry of Defence said that they held no information within the scope of our request. Well, that's a contradiction, isn't it? They either hold no information or is Section 26. Again, local residents were told that they were conducting a military exercise in case of an emergency situation, and the MOD replied, we have no information within the scope of your request. It took 2 years and 8 months for the Military Defence to even acknowledge that the planes that were here beforehand were here. When we asked the first time, military planes were seen circling on the 23rd, 24th and 25th of February 2016. Why was no NOTAM issued for these dates? The MOD holds no information within the scope of my request. When we asked them again, please tell me why ZZ418 and ZG996 were flying in circles and figure 8 patterns in the Pentyrch area from the 22nd of February 2016 until the 26th of February 2016, information is withheld under Section 26. And that was the first time that we'd had any acknowledgement those planes were here at all. But interestingly, ZZ418 that had been circling here for 3 days and 3 nights, at the time of the explosion, left this area and went to Smilog Woods, and not just anywhere in Smilog Woods. It went to the exact impact site and dropped in altitude and airspeed and was circling that exact area. I think Gary does have a slide for that. Nobody knew anything. That's the radar return. The yellow line is the trajectory of the green object in a straight line back to Pentyrch. And on the map also.
How many orbits has that done? How many laps of that area did that do? That's outrageous.
Couple.
Yeah.
Couple. I just wanted to say that I put a slide up just to show you that some of the questions. We've asked quite a lot of freedom of information requests. We've had different answers, but some of them were in that last slide I just showed when Caz was talking about it. But there's plenty more to show. But this line here leads all the way back from Pentyrch to this area, and that yellow line is the radar returns. That over there is Smilog Woods. This is the Royal Glamorgan Hospital around here. That's exactly where the center of that line is, and look where he's going. He's going smaller and smaller and smaller again. This is just before the explosions around the time of that, just before that happened.
Well, there was one question that we asked that the Ministry of Defence decided to skirt over the first time, and I knew that we'd asked the question, and it was, why did they lie about their identity if this was just a military exercise? And as I say, the first time they didn't answer it, and I said to Gary, they can't answer it. And he said, why? And I said, well, I'm hoping they'll come back with Section 26, which is exactly what they did. Section 26 withheld. And the reason why I was hoping for that is because this was a covert operation. And if this was covert, this means this was a real situation. and not an exercise. Now, why would the military be very interested in those two particular fields in Pentyrch if nothing happened? And Gary, you should talk about the EMF and radiation that you found there.
We'll hold that
Yeah.
thought, because when we come back after the break, I think that's a brilliant place to pick this up. Caz, thank you so much for again relaying that information to us. We're going to come back on the other side. Gary's going to add to that with some really compelling scientific evidence to add to this picture here, and then there'll be more to come from both Caz and Gary after the break. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. Okay, there we go. We've got 3 minutes break, and then we'll go back and listen,
I gotta run
guys.
to the toilet if no one
Yeah,
minds.
and
And me.
no probs. I'll talk to the people here. So thank you all for tuning in today. Sorry about jumping about on the cameras, but as you can see, it's when we're sharing screens and things, it'd be easier if we just kept sharing screens, but I don't think Gary's got the ability to do that. But for me, this has to be one of the most interesting UFO cases I've come across. Absolutely. In the UK in particular. It's right up there, if not, don't say this lightly, but it could surpass. It's different, but it could surpass what we've got even with something like Rendlesham. And we're so lucky we've got somebody like Caz that can actually talk to all of this. You know, some people, as we've seen, they don't even want their name put to it. They've seen something, but they realise the MOD's involved, so they don't want anything to do with it. So we're kind of lucky that Caz has put herself out there. And Caz hasn't really shared yet some of the harassment that her and her family have gone through. And I'm keen to get to that tonight as well. And even if we need to run over because we're on TFR for another half an hour, we'll be staying here on YouTube until we get everything cleared up, until the guys lay out everything that they want to tell you. And thank you all for tuning in. There's Caz back now. So, yeah, we'll get back into it in a couple of minutes. But Caz, I was telling the audience there as well that at some point, if you could, to kind of share some of the harassment that you've been getting in the background to try and stop you putting this out. Because, I mean, it adds to, in my opinion, there's no harassment or no hassle like you're getting if there isn't something that they're very determined to cover up. And that's not to take away from anything that you're going through with the threats and everything else, but from the outside looking in, I think that's a very key piece of information that I think people really need to be aware of, you know?
Okay. Gary needs to talk about the road closures, if you could ask him that when he comes back.
The EMF readings that he's about to get into in a moment, and I hope he can show the pictures as well, but that for me, when I was looking through that today, that's evidence of something out of the ordinary. Yeah,
over 1,000 feet long, that trail.
Yeah. And you're still getting readings a couple of years after it, which is strange as well, you know?
The readings he took was after Swansea were able to contact me. So those readings were taken 18 months after the event.
Yeah.
So
definitely something significant going on there, that's for sure. Gary,
talk about the road closures as well, Gar, because
oh yeah, this is something that went on, and we found this pretty much after Caz had went to a show in Merthyr Tydfil to tell the people pretty much the first day that we found out about it anyway. It was on the 28th of February, 2 days after the event. There was a presentation night being held at the Merthyr Tydfil Rugby Club. Sorry, just trying to get my breath, yeah? Right. There was a Q&A session at the end, and Caz told the entire audience there that night what she'd seen. And you could tell she was very full of adrenaline, you know, and clearly she had gone through something quite incredible. And she told that audience that night that what happened is that the military were there to intercept this incredible craft that she'd seen.
Okay, now I need to bring back the network. Two secs. Here we go. Sorry, we need to go back to the radio. Here we go.
EMF.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Final part of today's Kev Baker Show on TFRLive.com. Also going out on TalkStream Live, Paranormal Radio app, and today over on YouTube. And we're joined by Caz Clarke and Gari Jones, and we're talking about the Pentyrch UFO event that took place back in February 2016. And we're going to hear from Gari now, because Gari is a UFO researcher that got involved with this case. And Gari, when I was looking at some of your investigations today, some of the evidence that you were compiling, in particular the electromagnetic evidence that you're going to be talking about in a moment, for me, this is compelling evidence that something happened. Something unusual has taken place in that location. So over to you, brother. Tell us about your investigation into all of this.
Okay, then. So should I just start how I got in?
Yeah,
I first
man.
found out about it? Yeah. I'm sure I mentioned this earlier, but I'll just say it again quick. There was a presentation night in Merthyr Tydfil 2 days after the event. That would be the 28th of February 2016. There was a Q&A session after it, and at that point, Caz had got a hold of the microphone, and she just told the audience what she saw that night. And she was very, very energized, and very, full of adrenaline. She clearly had seen something incredible. And when she told the people what had happened, literally people's jaws hit the floor, and everyone was like, what? Turning right towards her. Because there had been those military trucks, planes, helicopters flying around for a few days and nights beforehand, and everyone knew something was up. Your own area, something was going on. And so I knew right there and then that something had gone on. And some people were speaking up in the audience that some of the roads had been closed, if not all of the roads had been closed around Smilog Woods on the M4 and leading into Lantricent area. When people tried to ask what's going on, one of them said, a truck is overturned and it caught fire. That's why this road is blocked. And one lady said she tried a number of roads and it was all the same story. It must be a pretty big truck then if it's closed all these roads. You know what I mean? And of course, another fella got up and talked about this explosion and the smell of sulfur, which we've covered just now. But I wanted to speak to Caz there and then because I knew something was up. I knew something had gone on. But I couldn't get to her at that time, and 18 months I tried searching for her online, and it was like somebody was blocking her or banning her picture from being seen when you went into the search engines. Anyway, once we finally made contact 18 months later and we got an idea of what we were dealing with, I suggested it would be a good idea with the Swansea UFO group, as well as myself, that we should do an EMF scan of these fields, because from my experience and research from other people, if you go into the area and do an EMF scan, you find higher unusual readings than the areas that have not been affected. The area of interest to the surrounding areas that are not affected. Then if you can find that, what you've got is good evidence to show that something that is, shall we say, used artificial gravity or anti-gravity.
Yeah,
what I'm
0
trying
point
to say.
energy, anti-grav.
Yeah. Well, I don't understand how it works. All I know is that from previous investigations, for some reason, they give off these incredible energies, especially in the electromagnetic field areas. And I thought it'd be a good idea to scan them. Now, I'm just going to get into the screen share because I want to show you what we've done. Now, we scanned these fields multiple times, right? But it was finally decided that once we found that the area was being affected by something very unusual, that we've got to do a grid reference search. In other words, you scan the area like, you go up from left to right, and you grid it all off, in parted areas. So, just bring it up now. This is just a little screenshot. Let me just move that out the way. This is just a screenshot of some of the things that we done. You can see that there's a power line there. Look, that's in the first field, not too far from the gates where Caz and Dave were standing. That's the magnetic field rating that it gave off. But we went to the other areas where the barrels and the craft had been seen, and these are just some of the readings it gives off. Now, this measures in micro Tesla, and anything above 0.4, this thing goes off because it's been deemed by those who know these things, studies and stuff, anything above 0.2 or 0.4 micro Tesla in the magnetic field range is harmful to people. Now, you have to understand that this is outdoors in a field. There's no wires under the ground. There's no electrical cables over or under. There's nothing there that would suggest that there's an artificial energy source by man, I should say, or anything natural in the ground. You know, the bedrock is limestone and mudstone and basic sandstone. There's nothing there at all that would suggest that would be giving off any unusual EMF. So, you know, we finally decided to do some scans. That's just the ball patch area. Remember when Caz was saying that things look dead?
Yeah.
This is what it looks like from a distance. That was like 18 months after, you know. And then the grass there, I mean, it's not green. It looked like it looked like AstroTurf kind of grass, you know, the plastically green stuff you find. So it didn't look right at all. But anyway, we scanned, we did metal detectors, and just made sure everything, we weren't getting false positives. What I'm trying to say is, once that we had scanned this field, this one, and the surrounding fields, you know, we've only found EMF signals, high EMF signals in these areas. And this is the path, this is the way the area the craft was seen. Now, what I'll just highlight to your viewers and your listeners, especially those who can see this, right? We broke it off into two sections, yeah? So just left to right, left to right, left to right. Do you understand what I mean by a grid reference search?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So once we found an area that was going above the safety range, the 0.4 microtesla, we put a flag down or a ribbon or something just to mark it, right? Didn't really find much over here, but we found a cluster just by there. The red dots represent what we found there. Some of them, look. This line here, we started to realize that there was a trail, amazingly, that was leading in to the second to the third field. And we just continued to scan across. We were finding some over here, finding some over there, until eventually we got to the ball patch area, and that's where we got the highest readings. You know, we were getting readings. You could just hold the mouse, you could hold the scanner still, and Mike Maunda, who was of the Swansea UFO group, he was just holding it like this, and it was just going off like a Christmas tree lighting up. Literally, the thing would just not stop. And what's really interesting is when Caz, before we even done this, Caz told us the path that this craft had took, and Dave. It said it came down, you know, and it moved across the field. It seemed to come very close to them at some point, like around here, and then it moved back up the third field to the ball patch area, which is where the hand of lightning came out, right? And it's just incredible that we found a trail. The yellow
it's
trail,
almost like the flight path, isn't it? It's almost like
exactly, the path that it took. And it's just amazing that we found that 18 months, 20 months after the event, and this is exactly how it looked. And when I found that, I said, Caz, this is this is just unbelievable proof of what you said, because you told us this beforehand. You couldn't make that up. It's not natural. It's not man-made. We've ruled out everything we can. The only explanation for this is that it's been left there by some artificial energy source, and the only thing that it can be is from that large craft that Caz and Dave saw, right? Now, just down by the gates there, you know, we found we found some signals there, and those are just some of the readings that we got. We got more than that, but, you know, we were getting some as high as 0.8 sometimes, but on the day when we started doing this, that was what we were finding. And you know, those signals have dissipated over time and have since disappeared. You won't find them anymore. And I should say that the base reading, you know, the base reading for all this, the areas not affected, was somewhere between 0.05 and 0.1, and we're getting above 0.4 and as high as 1.
Yeah,
right?
that's significant.
So that is just not explained by any natural or man-made energy, okay, or natural phenomena. It just
have you ever been at any other sites where this has happened? Have you tried this anywhere else at all, Gary?
Smiloak Woods, yes, I will get into that. I've never tried it in usually by the time I get to other places, the craft has never been seen close enough to the ground, because unfortunately, right, most of the time it's seen in the air, never comes close enough to the ground. It's only when the craft is seen in countryside, farmlands, you know, open grass field areas where trees and soil and grass and plants exist, yeah? That energy gets absorbed into the ground and it just stays there for a determined period of time, however long it takes to dissipate, right? And it was there 18 months, 20 months, I mean, 3 years until it, or 4 years until it finally went. You know, you won't find it now. You take a good EMF scan of it, you will not find anything. And I've got evidence to prove that.
And again,
But
that's compelling because it shows it's not some kind of underground wire or
No.
so you see it.
no
So
fissures,
yeah, the
no
fact
cracks,
that yeah,
no.
again,
There's
it
nothing
just
there,
adds to it.
There's even coal mining operations that went on there. There's no coal mine. There's coal mining's more towards the across Tinnacoid Road and up around.
And for
that
the
area, but there's
audience
nothing here. I
out there,
looked.
is the audience out there as well. I mean, Gary, he's got a video on BitChute. You don't have to take my word for it, but he shows where he's gone and looked at the geological surveys, the
Yes,
types of rock and everything. You know.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, no.
I've got a I'll show you the links now. Hopefully, when we get through this. I did a video called an EMF enhancement study because I just wanted people to see exactly how much effort went into this. We didn't just go around and whatever. We actually did a thorough good job on this. And these are just some maps I put together. The distance between the point where we started scanning up until the ball patch in this distance area is about 963 feet or 294 meters. And this craft didn't move that far from left to right, did it, Caz?
No.
It's not as if, you could see it from, you had to turn your head to see it. You could see it. Yeah.
Anti-clockwise.
Yeah. It didn't go, what I'm trying to say is it didn't go big swing. It just moved a little bit here and there. And I've just thought, well, it might be interesting to see how big it was. I mean, we've got 963 feet there. So we're talking many hundreds of feet wide or tall, just an enormous size. But, this is Smilog Woods here. We did this one too, pretty much around the same time. That's the fell trees that supposedly contain Larch disease.
And it's a very similar reading that you're getting as well, 0.4.
Yes, these readings were very similar again. And I did a grid reference search of all the area. I'll show you now. This is the map I put together with a key index. This is the old trees that got felled. Excuse me. Those are the bike trails that lead down, look. And then they come across the road and lead down here and then they go somewhere else. But all this area was cut down. All that area there was felled. But what's interesting, right, is I went around here. It's a little hard to get around it, but I was able to, twist my ankle a few times doing it. But literally, this is what we got. We scanned inside the ball patch area, the impact area. Those are the readings we got there. There's more than that, but those are the ones that I was able to clearly log. Because it's hard to note, log this and that and everything else. But what's interesting, right, is we got a line. See that yellow line there?
Yeah.
That, I went across all that, cross-referenced. I wasn't getting anything here. As soon as I come across around this area, I got a beep. And I turn, come back, nothing, beep. And then I come back, and finally, it's like, well, that's a bit strange, because if you follow that line back, that goes all the way back to the Royal Glamorgan Hospital and back to Lantriston Common. That if the impact site, if this thing was shot down and it came flying through all these areas, it's left some part of itself or some part of it.
It's like dripping something or debris. Yep.
Which is why they cut it down. Yep. No Larch disease there, but they cut it down. They said it was because of another thing, as they said, is the bike trails that been there unofficially, and some of these trees had to be cleaned. But I don't see why they got to clear all the areas where this thing is impacted on. And of course, I was just going to say, look, we got this pink line area here. This is interesting, right? Because this is the road. The military would have driven around here, come up to here and seen this impact site. And I think what's happened is we found this trail here, which I thought was bizarre. All alongside the road here. Now, this is just my guess, right? But my guess is whatever's crashed here, right? They've picked it up and put it alongside the road there because Dave said he saw two Apaches following a Chinook going back and forth from Lantris and back to St. Athens and then back to Lantris and in this area again. He could see it from his house.
So what we're kind of hearing here is multiple journeys by multiple aircraft, potentially retrieving whatever was shot down.
Yeah.
This is why, folks, I don't say this lightly, but why is not more people talking about this? Especially at this time when UFOs are everyone seems to be talking about them. Now,
And, you know,
now, Gary,
just to, sorry,
Caz
can I just bring
mentioned.
this up?
On you go.
Okay. Now, I remember we said that people were talking about 420, that they heard loud explosions.
Yeah.
That's the seismic signal from that explosion. I got that from Monmouth Station, 40 miles northwest of, or northeast of Lantricent. Right? Now, there it is again more clearly. This green line represents 15 to 30 minutes. There's your 4 a.m. As you go 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 16, 17, 18, all the way up to 421. 4:21 a.m. There's a transient signal there that they can't explain. And there's the Apache look. It had to make an emergency landing at 4:34. There's its, I don't know if you can see it there, look,
yeah.
but there's that website again, look, Gunship 1 for a circuit and departure to the northeast. It landed with emergency smoke in the cockpit. So clearly, this object that went northwest earlier that Caz said she'd seen, you know, they'd headed over to Lantricent, and I reckon that the reason why the other plane was making all those circles and loops around that area is because this green object either got forced out or flushed out or something. And the reason I say that is because of this. I just want to tie this in, sorry, because I've had people giving me crap over this one. Right? Let's just go here. Now, I said that people heard gunfire, right? Well, sounded like gunfire, yeah?
Yep.
This person here posted on one of the hubs on Facebook that their dad was a patient at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital on the night in question, and he said he heard a lot of gunfire, aerial activity, and then a huge bang, which shook him in his hospital bed. He lived through the war and was later an armourer in the RAF, so he knew what he was hearing. He said it was quite unnerving. This was going on over...
You've also got... the kind of transcripts of people that have phoned into 999 and people that have been
got those on there. I can look at them,
but there's multiple. The point, I think the point for the people to take is this isn't just Caz's story and maybe one other person that Caz knows.
Other people confirm other things.
Yep. It's like multiple witnesses from different kind of locations around the same area that are all telling the same story. Now, I know Caz was wanting you to mention the roads been shut off as well, Gary. The roads around the area.
Yeah, that would come from the FOIs with the police. We've basically been asking them why the roads were closed, who authorized the roads to be closed, and nobody seems to know anything about the roads being closed. But when we asked them, they said that the people who took part in the operations have since retired. So they don't know what we're talking about, but when they ask them about the people, they seem to know what operations they were involved in. You know, it's so I have to say, like, you know, if you want to see a lot of this evidence, go to the presentation files that we've put up, and you'll see them there. But you know, I can't put everything on screen.
No, you've done a great job of it now.
But you know, the roads were closed all around Lantricent, and footpaths were closed, and the M4. Now, some people have said that the police will do this from time to time because some illegal activities go on up there. But when it comes to this, for some silly reason, sorry, can you see me? Okay.
Yeah, see you. Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, when we go asking the police about why the roads were closed, they just won't give us a straight answer, and they just seem to say that I've had saying that one of my requests were vexatious, that you know that they were not worthy of being answered, if you to say, or I'm asking too many questions, and I'm asking just normal questions. And on top of that, now we're asking them about the Welsh Counter-Terrorism Extremism Unit. I hope I'm saying that right. Because that's actually funded in part by the Home Office. And now the Home Office have gotten back to us saying that the South Wales Police would have been the ones who would have the answers to the questions we're asking, you know. Why were the Welsh counter-extremism people involved? And on top of that, were they the ones probably involved in closing the roads? Because no one gave authorization to close the roads. They closed the roads down after the explosions. That's why people were struggling to get home that night. And since then, when we've asked pretty basic, simple questions, they just fob us off with, you know, vexatious requests, or they don't hold this information, or the officers who were involved in the operation have since retired. So if you don't hold any information, how do you know the police officers involved have since retired?
Now, Gary, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, but Caz, we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left with the bigger radio audience on here. I would love to just hand it over to you. I want you to let
Can I just do one more thing, just very, very quickly? I will not take a minute for this.
We're still going to be staying on YouTube afterwards.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just I want to give Caz a
Sorry.
chance to really, because you haven't really told the audience about the hassle you're getting.
No.
You know, the threats that have been made, and
After Swansea UFO Network, after Swansea UFO Network became involved, and Gari Jones, they published the story in their small club, and I had someone contact me via my Facebook page who said that he had an interest in the case. And other people have also had an interest and have come out, and I've showed them around and explained how I saw things and what happened. So I didn't think anything was different this time, only it was. And this guy came out, he was extremely fit. He had big legs like he was a cyclist, you know. But he could have thrown me on his shoulder and run with me for 5 miles, not a problem. And when I was trying to explain to him what had happened, he wasn't trying to envisage, he was remembering. He was part of the operation that night. And David was with me, he had his young son with him. And he threatened David and gestured towards his young child and said, "Aren't you worried about what's going to happen to your kid?" And with that, David's left and picked up his son and run away, leaving me there with my friend. Thankfully, I didn't go out on my own. And I was just a little bit more intrigued as to who this person was. I wasn't quite sure I fully understood what he'd said to David, or did that really just happen? So I gave him the EMF meter to check the ground. I mean, if he was really interested, he'd have been checking the EMF. But he was holding the EMF but not really looking at it. And I felt very uncomfortable having my back to him, so I turned around. We walked out to the ball patch in the fields. And he'd looked across to the field where they did the fingertip search, like he was remembering what had happened. That's where the pyramid came in. And he said to me, "What did I want?" And I said, "I didn't want anything for myself." I said, "I'm on borrowed, it doesn't really matter what happens to me, I'm on borrowed time anyway, because this thing made me ill." We went back to the gate where we watched everything. And he said, "Did you know?" He said, "Accidents happen all the time." He said, 5 people were killed in a car accident recently. Aren't you worried about what's going to happen to you and your family? And that's what really set a fire under me to come forward. I didn't want to come forward, but no one's going to threaten me and my children. No one. These intimidation tactics have to stop. Not just for myself, but for other witnesses in other cases where they've been ridiculed to the point of suicide, where they've been threatened. I mean, they threatened to kill me. That just can't happen. And it is happening. And just because this happened outside my house, I'm not going to stop this investigation. I am going to go to government. I am going to go to Parliament. I am serious about this. I took and passed 3 lie detectors, and there it is, ladies and gents. I don't know if you can see this. Hang on, let me get this lined up. From a forensic polygraph examiner, that is the seal. This is not a joke. This is real. I took and passed 3 polygraph tests to say what I said I saw was true and what I said I saw was real. I'm not here to convince people. I'm here to inform people. This was real and this happened. And what the military did that night was illegal and unjust. I've lost picture.
Sorry, I was just gonna put it up for you.
Thank you. Carrie Austin is my polygraph examiner. She's the leading forensic polygraph examiner in the country. She's the designer of the pre-test for the polygraph. She is the best at what she does. Please check her out. That is the legit certificate. And I did it to prove that what I said I saw was true. I am not the only witness. But if I was, would it make what I had to say any less true? I think Mahatma Gandhi said, if you are right and you know it, speak the truth. Even if you're in the minority of one, the truth is still the truth. And what I've told you today is the truth. We haven't got into all of the details about patients being shaken awake in their beds, about the Royal Glamorgan Hospital not knowing anything. You know, the fire service didn't know anything. The Forestry Commission didn't know anything. The Royal Mint didn't know anything. You know, nobody knew anything. Local government didn't know anything. And yet this was supposed to have been an exercise. In which case, everybody should have known. But no one did.
Well, Caz, I want to thank you before we wrap up the radio end of things today. Gary, you're keeping me on my toes with us switching screens every 2 minutes. I'm telling you, brother. We're out of time, but I want to thank you. I want to thank Caz for coming on to TFR today, and Gary for sharing this most important UFO incident. It's probably the UFO incident that most people have never heard of. I want you to tell everyone about this and use this as a platform to do your own research into what happened in Pentyrch in 2016. Okay, we're off radio now, guys. So, listen, I know we didn't cover absolutely everything on the 2-hour stream there, but now we've got a chance. If there's anything else you want to get out there at all, we can take our time. Gary, you can, like, do the crazy camera thing again. I'll keep on my toes and try and keep up with you.
There are one or two things I felt that didn't get quite covered. I know
we've still got 164 people on YouTube alone watching right now.
But let's do it for them then. Okay. Yeah. I know I did the EMF stuff. That's a given. You're not going to change that. Okay, I can prove that beyond any reasonable doubt. But what I have got some other evidence to show, and this one is with our radiation Geiger counter evidence, right?
And before you bring that up, before you bring that up, Caz, I know some of the audience as well have been asking me. I'll get Gary to share his part first, but they want to know about lost time, that kind of thing, because I think there's an aspect of that in this case as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
So Gary, I'll come to you first then, man. And we'll pull up if you start sharing screens, I'll get the screen we need to be on.
Okay. Let me just do it again. Sorry if I keep knocking it on and off.
That's okay, man. That's okay.
Certain things I can't show on the screen when I'm going between things.
No, I understand. That's all right. There you go. Okay.
Right. Can I talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, now this is something that I would really like anyone who's got a bit of a scientific understanding of the radiation detectors, because EMF I've got a pretty good understanding of, but it's just this particular meter that was bought. Emlyn Williams of Swansea UFO Network got this, and along with Mike Maunder and myself and Caz and a few others, we went around those areas that we knew where the hotspots and the trails were. And do you remember when I told you about the second field and the third field, the trail that it followed?
Yep.
Look, you can probably remember seeing it. We went around all that again because we knew where things were. We scanned other areas as well, but we were more interested in this at this point. And this I think how you pronounce this is Rontgen radiometer DP66. It's a 1971 Polish model, and when Emlyn bought it, according to the seller, yes, it was in good working order and it was calibrated, okay? And I don't think that it would be any less calibrated than a few percentage points on terms of where we are here. Now, this is the lowest sensitive reading that it gets. It's that 0.5 millirontgen per hour, and that's it right there, that little setting right there. Now, when we scanned on that setting, right, these are the results we were getting. We were getting 5, 7, 6s, some were 10, 9, and stuff like that. Now, I don't understand enough about this particular meter to really suggest that this is exactly what we're getting at, but I think we're in the right ballpark here, right? Because too many people have gotten mistaken or a little bit confused about our readings on this. We have said that the radiation in that area was equivalent to a chest x-ray or a dental x-ray in these areas, right, the hotspot areas. Now, how I know this is because I've had other people who know something about it tell me that it is, but I want a scientist, I want a proper scientist to confirm it. I really want someone who knows about it, because when I convert Milleron Chen per hour to microsievert per hour, which is what I'm more used to using anyway. This is what you can see here. Look, this is a converter. This is the actual website that I use. This I can link the links clear if anyone wants it. You can see down there, look, those are the two things selected. I just chose 5 as a reading, and what does it convert into microsieverts per hour? And it comes up as 50, right? So 1 would be 10, from 1 to 10, 10 would be 100. 100 microsieverts per hour is roughly a chest x-ray, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, your daily background is around 0.17. That's microsieverts, and we're getting readings as high as 100 in those areas.
Yeah, that's not right.
Considering now if this is right, and this is the part I really would like someone to help me with. I've already written to the Office of Nuclear Regulatory, the Office of Nuclear Regulatory Office, I think it's called. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they are like the official body for Nuclear Regulatory Office in Britain. They haven't got back to me. They should have done so about 3 weeks ago, and I've sent them reply emails. They won't get back to me. We seem to be hitting some brick walls with people who got no business, in this, and yet we can't get them to answer us. As I said, there's our ball patch area right there. Right? There's our trail. These are our 2 fields. According to the converter, and if this is correct, we're getting readings as high enough as a chest x-ray. Now look at this. This is a microsieverts per hour, and that's just reading 1.88, and that's apparently more hazardous. Shelter or leave the area immediately. And we were walking around, and according to the converter, right, this reading here, in areas around 10 to 100, right, for like 3 hours at a time, 2 hours at a time. And every time we went into those fields, right, for that length of time, and especially in the 18th to 21 month period after it all, every time, headaches, nausea, sickness to the stomach, our skin feeling red burned and sensitive to touch. I mean, you could rub your fingernails across my arm. It felt like someone slicing me with a scalpel. Sharp, rusty, horrible, nasty thing. It just felt like someone cutting me. The headaches, sensitivity in the eyes. I felt like I was on fire inside. And all the other people, the Sufon team, Caz's
there's
friends.
another way of looking at this as well. I'm sure you've probably considered this, but we're looking at this as being whatever the craft, this machine, whatever evidence or whatever traces this has left. But let me kind of shift our perspective a little, because Caz definitely seems to be describing something that comes from one dimension into the other. And if that's the case, I don't know if the correct word to use is wormhole or rift or portal or something like that. But I think you might need to be careful in and around that area, Gary, and you, Caz, because the military knew that this was going to be the area to begin with. Now, that's quite interesting. Did they have intel from wherever this craft was coming from? Or is it more likely they had identified an area where you can have this kind of bleeding through from one dimension to the other?
Can I answer that? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I answer that? Sorry, I just, I'm not saying that these readings are 100%, but they certainly would be consistent with the kind of effects you can have from this kind of level of radiation. Now, I don't know. All right, I want someone to help me on that. But as you just brought this up, right, I want to just answer this one, because something else that came up in the research that I was very intrigued by. I just need to find it. You see, now you're talking about, they might have some indication as to why this thing was there, right? Or how they knew it was coming.
Or even just that there's a portal or something there, I
don't know about portals. I'm not going to say, right? I don't understand the technology. Caz was there. She saw it. And when she says interdimensional, I believe her on that. It seems to be able, because I've seen videos of people who've caught it before. It's like these saucer-shaped craft, these triangular craft. They fly across the sky, and then they seem to fizzle like some sort of, like the white screen on your TV, and then they just disappear. I don't understand why that happens. I don't know. But now that you bring something up, right, these are here. Do you know anything about trig points or energy centers, ley lines of the Earth?
Ley lines, yeah.
Okay. Well, it seems some of our older ancestors knew about them too. They have these like little small concrete plinths or obelisk things in certain areas, and they follow along these lines, right? They all branch out, and I think that's Sheffield in the middle there. I can't quite make it out. But you see these like dots that I put out, right? On the lines. They all appear. These are major UFO sightings that happened, major UFO cases that happened since the last 30 or 40 years. You got Berwyn Mountain here, look. The Denby Lights, which is a case I investigated, and believe me, that's true. That was a craft that was recorded. You got Pentyrch down here, look, on the line. Rendlesham Forest incident, it's right just below. Another one of those lines. You got Nottingham from 1987. Some people call it the Nottingham Roswell. That was another one there. The Sheffield one, the Sheffield incident from 1997, right here, look. And there's one that I think Paul Sinclair might be looking into. He found a very interesting case, very similar to this one in terms of what people saw. Lights coming around a large craft, military jumping onto the sea front, came out of nowhere. And some of the FOI responses are very similar to ours. And they're all, every one of them, I don't know if you can see, all in line or near close to these energy lines. Now, I'm just speculating on this one, right? But it's my guess is that these craft seem to understand something about the Earth's energy grids or the magnetic fields or something, and that they use those as maybe gateways to come in here. I'm just saying, because that plane, that ZZ418, before he came to Lantriston, he was circling around Cornwall, he was circling around Plymouth, and then he settled on this area, and he was there for 3 days and nights with the other plane, ZG996. Just in this area, right here, nowhere else. They went nowhere else. They stayed right there. And that plane is part of a program called iStar, which works in tandem with the E3 in order to bring up-to-date information to the forces on the sea, on the land, and up in the atmosphere. And they can even work in satellites as well. So, you know, I find that very interesting when you start comparing the size and scale of the operation that went on around here. And I've had people tell me that the military, as Caz has said, they could go to Sennybridge, they could go to the Brecon Beacons, they could go to any empty land that they own and carry on. They would never carry out an exercise over a public airspace on residential areas for fear of accidents. And guess what? They had a friggin' accident. One of their Apaches had to make an emergency landing at Cardiff Airport just 15 minutes after a bang that shook a Royal Glamorgan hospital, left a flipping smoke sulfur in the air, caused some trees to snap and crash, which the military had to cut off, with the police force acting very strangely. And on top of that, someone, as I said, in the hospital who had gunfire. It's my guess is that they were shooting at this thing in the forest, which that ZZ418 was circling just moments prior. And they got it to come out, and they fired at it, and they've sent it back in there, and the Apache got on the receiving end of it. That's just I reckon the evidence fits that.
No,
I'm certain of it. I'm certain of it.
Yep.
I'm absolutely bloody certain of that. That is because the timeline fits everything that we put together.
So Caz, if I take you to the field then, with what Gary said there, and I can follow along with what he's talking about there. I think he makes a good case of that timeline. How did it play out in the field? I mean, did it feel like our military were there waiting to ambush this thing? How would you describe that kind of like what went down in that field?
They knew it was coming. They absolutely knew it was coming. You know, some people have said to me, well, did I think it decloaked? And I said, well, if it was cloaked, why didn't it stay cloaked? If it knew that it was surrounded by military aircraft. The military knew it was coming here, and they had it down to just a few days before its arrival. They knew imminently it was coming here and not anywhere else. If it was cloaked, it could have been anywhere. But it was here, and they were waiting for it. And I've jokingly said, or what they were really doing was waiting for me to drop my hanky in the field to start their multi-million-pound exercise with aircraft that were up to 50 miles out. They exceeded a NOTAM that was inserted at 9 o'clock that night when they decided to bring everything down from Durham, which is where normally Exercise Chameleon takes place. All at the same time, everything came down. There was no commencement date for this exercise that they inserted. Every military exercise has a commencement date. They can even tell you what they're doing. You can even go and watch a military exercise, but they never have all of these assets in the air all at the same time. They exceeded the NOTAM by up to 50 miles. They went from here in Pentyrch through, there's some of the messages coming in to local police. The yellow line is the NOTAM that was issued. They went through Pentyrch, through Llantrisant, through Port Talbot, through Neath, through Swansea and out to sea, 50 miles outside of this so-called NOTAM. They closed the entire country's airspace in Wales. This is no small thing. They knew it was coming, and they knew it was coming here, and they set an ambush for it.
Caz, tell him about the green, the guy who saw the green cluster.
Okay, we've got a witness in Betws in Bridgend, and he made a comment at the time on the Wave, which is a radio thing in Swansea, and he'd said that he saw military jets and helicopters pursuing a cluster of green lights. And that answers the question to where the other barrels ended up going west of here, being pursued by military jets and helicopters.
And when you've seen that, Caz, you described it as almost being alive. Was it?
Yeah,
was it like more like plasma than solid? How would you describe it?
Like they were living machines, like they were the essence of life encapsulated in these things, that they were conscious and intelligent, and we shot them down anyway. They were, I don't think it was plasma, but I don't know. Like I've described it like white noise on a TV screen, but it was more than that. It was turning in on itself, like they were alive.
It's like energy, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And completely silent. And as I say, no downdraft, no nothing. But when it scanned me, it was just euphoric. It was the most amazing feeling. If I could go back for a second go, I would, you know.
You'd be amazed how many people say that, actually. They've had this incredible experience and they wish they could have it again. You know, just to, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot more than you think.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, the military definitely knew they were coming here. So that leaves one option, that it came through a conduit into this dimension. It didn't decloak, otherwise it would have stayed cloaked. If it was cloaked, it could have been anywhere and not just here. You know, there seems to be a lot of evidence of absence and not absence of evidence, where the military, for example, have deleted all low-level flying exercises for the week preceding up to and including the 26th of February 2016.
Yeah, sometimes the absence of information can be evidence itself, you know?
Right, and then it all goes back to normal on the 27th of February. NASA's Earthwatch, another one. I think Gary's got some information on that, where the week
I'll need to
preceding
dig that up now.
up to and including the 26th of February 2016 has all been deleted, and yet on the 27th it goes back to normal. There's a lot of this.
There's only like, I mean, you're talking about a level of government and spook involvement to get that kind of thing pulled. I mean, we're talking the upper echelons of government here.
Right. Well, you know, I can talk about the cover-up itself, the suppression of the evidence, and suppression of this incident. Google, YouTube, Facebook, BitChute, just to name just a handful of the search engines that are deliberately suppressing this information and have been for the last 5 years.
I mean, you were the front and center of a documentary that I watched. It came out not long ago. You're talking about over 250,000 views. Typically, anything with that kind of views and trending that much would be really easy to find on YouTube. I had to dig for pages today to find what is a very trending, very popular video covering this one case. And I had to wade through things that I didn't put other UFO incidents in my search, but they were coming up before this major video about Pentyrch. It's weird.
Yeah, Pentyrch has been
They're
buried for a
hiding
long
it.
time. You know, people searched for me, Gary did specifically, for a full 18 months. And it wasn't that I wasn't there. I seemed to be shadow banned, that when people looked for me, they couldn't find me.
Well,
The
this
same,
is another thing I think is really important for the audience to really appreciate as well. Me and Gary, we've obviously had a long time interest in these kind of topics, but this is something that totally new to you. You weren't somebody that was out looking for UFOs or like gorging this kind of content. This was something that you didn't ask for. This wasn't your cup of tea. UFOs.
not at all. I
you know?
mean, you know, to be quite frank, you know, somebody sent me, I think, the Disclosure Project about 20 years ago, which I watched with about 3.5 million other people. But, you know, I've watched E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind too, but it never compelled me to go out and join a UFO group, you know. It wasn't in my thinking. It didn't fathom in my life at all. So when it happened, I really wasn't expecting it. I wasn't a member of any UFO groups or clubs or anything. I didn't know who to turn to. I really did feel lost in the world for the first time in my life. And now knowing how many agencies are actually involved, you know, for the police to take 3 years to answer a Freedom of Information request when we're asking about road closures that happened several years ago. You know,
This is
to
the
be told that
worldview
it's,
thing that you were talking about, Caz. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to play it for the people, that's all.
yeah, because the files are deleted and they don't pretend or try and hide the fact that they've deleted everything. The screen just goes black. You know, this is
I mean,
normal.
sometimes you'll lose a day, but you don't lose a whole week.
Yeah.
And we
Here
lost
it
the whole
comes.
week.
Look, watch. Gone. It should go, yeah. Totally.
No, it's
Black.
black.
Black. 27th, 28th, back up again. Look, everything's fine.
That's bizarre.
Shouldn't be happening.
No.
No, it shouldn't be happening. But it's
Like I say, you lose a day or two or a block or two, but you'll never lose a whole week.
It's
Yeah.
a deletion of evidence, a deliberate deletion of evidence, so people can't see it. You know, I didn't know anything about EMF and radiation when Gary first started doing his tests, but I'm glad that he found them because it vindicates me that this did happen, and the trail leads from where this thing came in and where it went out again, and nowhere else. You know, the whole area was searched.
So Kaz, let me ask you about this missing time. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I wish I could. You know, for David and I, we were only out at the gate for maybe 10, 15 minutes tops, if that. And that included walking down to the second gate and back again. And I didn't know that I'd lost time. And it was only really when I spoke to Gary, and Gary had established the timeline of the explosion, and my stomach flipped, because it scares me not knowing. You know, I've always sort of been in control all my life, and then to suddenly realize that I've lost over an hour in time, it scares me because I don't know. I really don't know what happened in that time, but I think I know when we lost the time, because I was still standing on the gate, and I remember the pyramid and the green object and that flying away, but I didn't see where the barrels came from. They were just there moving towards me. So there's a gap somewhere. We should have been able to remember where those barrels were. We should have been able to see them approaching us, and we didn't. But it really did make me feel sick to my stomach when I realized that we'd lost this time. And some people have said to me, you know, you should do a regression, but I'm afraid of that. I don't know that if I'm put into an hypnotic state, that I'm not in a dream state and making stuff up. I need to stick with what I know I saw, what happened, the reality of what happened, you know, and the reality of what happened is that no hand of friendship was extended by our military, no attempt to communicate by our military. They just pursued it and shot it down. And that involves us all. Every human being on this planet. Because the only thing the military are interested in is technology and weaponry. There is no compassion or love within the military. And that is a huge part of what makes us human. And if there is a conflict going on, and clearly there is, then we should be told about it. And if our governments don't know, then they should. And I had the Ministry of Defence turn up at Gary and mine last presentation as members of our audience, who told us to our face, the Ministry of Defence, no. I said, I know they know, I was there, I saw it. So the Ministry of Defence continued to deny. But I think I've caught them out so far on about 6 lies or contradictions, because they don't like to be called lies. And at present, we're waiting for 2 FOIAs to come back from South Wales Police. They're relatively simple questions, but they can't answer them because every time they answer them, their lies are transparent. You know, we asked about road closures, and we were told it was a vexatious request, which means worrisome. How can road closures that happened in the past be worrisome to anyone? And yet, when we eventually get an answer, is they can't find any information regarding the incident, but the police officers involved have since left the organisation. Well, if there was no incident, how do they know who was involved? You know, this is ridiculous, the answers they give us. I can't wait for the police to answer us. The same now with the Forestry Commission and their answers regarding Larch disease. You know, the fact that there was no health notice, plant health notice on Pentyrch Forest, ever. And yet they're trying to tell us there was Larch disease there. Never. So why did they fell those trees? I know why. Because every single one of them was chopped in half. That's why they felled those trees. And they hastily tried to clean it up afterwards.
And Caz, there's something different about this case compared to the numerous others out there as well, because you're not just talking about it, you don't have a link to sell a book on it, and in fact, you're doing something in the real world about this, because you're taking it to the Welsh Assembly, right?
That's right, yes. We're going to the government, because the people need answers. I want answers, because only a war declared by a government that's got the authority to declare a war is a just war. The Queen has a royal prerogative to declare war, but if that was the case, even after that war would start, there would be a public debate in Parliament about it. And we've been told absolutely nothing. So what the military did that night was not only illegal, it was unjust. And they keep talking about a public interest test. Well, let's have a public interest test. Let's have a public vote on the subject of disclosure. And then we'll see truly what the public interest test is. So we're going to the Welsh Assembly, and we're going to ask for a public vote and a public inquiry into this, because this was real. This was real. And as a human being, I say not in my name, because those things didn't do anything to anyone, and our military shot them down for their technology. Nothing else. Nothing else. If they were hostile, David and I would not be here. But we are. I think it was disgraceful what they did, and I think we've all got a right, as human beings, to know what's going on, because we are all being tarred with the same brush. What happens if they come back with their gunships? Where does that leave us? And we're not even supposed to know they exist.
Wow. Gary, any final thoughts that you want to get out there before we start to wrap this up, brother?
Only that just go watch the presentations, keep spreading the word on this, believe in Caz Clarke. She's probably the best witness I've ever come across in any case over the last 10 years, and I'm just very fortunate enough to be the person who can lead the investigation with her into this, you know. So I mean, look, you know, from an investigative standpoint, I mean, something we didn't cover in this is that when me and Caz Clarke first actually met, finally, and we got into all the details about it, right, I really questioned whether or not she was telling the truth. Because it was like, you know, what you're saying here is quite a dramatic encounter, a very intricate, detailed story, and, you know, I've never heard anything like it, you know, and we kind of locked horns on a lot of issues. It got to a point where I was like, no, I don't buy this. This is just ridiculous. You know, I mean, I can buy a sighting from a distance and large, some sort of military, but what you're describing is something like out of a movie. But once we started to do scans, and I started to look at the military timeline, and I started to see other people confirming a lot of what she'd said, and I was like, well, hang on now, you can't make this up. No, you can't make the EMF, you can't make the guy, you can't make the military timeline, you can't make the police reports, you can't ask other people to lie on your behalf. You know, this stuff just doesn't add up. You know, and then when you put it all together, it's like, you know, you tell me, you know, a lot of people keep saying TR3B. It's not a TR3B.
No.
TR3B doesn't need a military huge presence to let it see that. People could see it and it can just fly off and go away, you know, and then other people keep yapping on about why didn't you get your phone out and take pictures. Well, let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw something like this and decided
and
very
Gary,
quickly,
those same people, right? Those same people, if you showed them pictures, would say, nah, it's fake.
Oh yeah, that would be one of the things I said. They would turn around and say it was fake. Yeah.
I've had people here to come and skywatch because we still have objects flying around here, nothing quite as majestic as what happened that night. And one person said, you know, I've got 2 sets of binoculars, cameras, I'm ready. If anything happens, I'm going to film it. And then when it happens, they just stand in shock and awe of what they're witnessing. Because, you know, your cognitive function just goes.
Yep.
You're not believing what you're seeing, but it's there anyway. I was in shock and awe when I saw the pyramid. And the more that emerged, the more that I stared at it because I wanted to see it. But I never believed that that was going to happen. But it did happen. This was real. And the military knew it was real.
When you heard the explosions that night, did you put 2 and 2 together and connect it with what you had seen and everything?
Yes, I knew in my heart that they'd shot that green object down, and proving it was something else. I wanted to know, which is why I went to Llantrisant, to the Common, to follow the trail, the breadcrumbs, if you like, of all the comments that were left on Wales Online. And then to be told that the second explosion had come from Smilog Woods, and venturing into Smilog Woods and finding that the debris trail was huge. All of the trees had been snapped off. You know, it takes a huge amount of energy to snap one tree, but there were at least 100 trees that had been snapped, and then that led into this impact site where, again, there are 6 quite large trees, and they hadn't just snapped, they had almost exploded with the energy. And one of the trees has still been left standing. It is quite distended, almost like it had tried to explode from the inside out. It's really bizarre there. You have to go and see this before the Forestry Commission actually destroy all of the evidence. And I think the reason why they didn't take down those last few trees is because it's part of a different acreage for the forest. And because the forest is a sustainable forest, they can only fell a certain acreage every year, even though the trees that they felled were not outlined to be felled. The excuse that they've given that Larch disease was the answer has been proven tonight to be an absolute downright lie on 2 Freedom of Information requests that we've subjected to National Resources for Wales local government. And people asked me if they knew. Now I believe they did know. Because when we got up there on the 27th to videotape the crash site, the cleanup operation had already started. Branches and huge branches had all been dragged into big piles already. Instead of them laying left and right of you in a cascade, in a straight line, they've been dragged already. So the cleanup operation had already started. But they broke their own felling rules when they felled those trees in December and January of 2016 going into 2017.
Caz, if I can Sorry, I was just going to say, you remember we were checking this map out? See these brown areas here?
Right.
Those are supposed to be the areas that they're supposed to cut down. This green area, that's, if I'm looking at this map correctly, I do believe that's the impact area there. The green area wasn't supposed to be cut.
But they cut it down anyway.
Yes.
Wow.
So it wasn't even earmarked to be felled. But as I say, there have been no plant health notices placed on that forest ever. Ever. And yet they say that they've received one. And so giving it the benefit of the doubt, let's say we go back to 2014, perhaps they looked for Larch disease then and found it, and so that they could fell them later that year or the next year, you know. But going back a decade, and there is no plant health notice that have been placed on any tree in Smilog Woods ever.
So bizarre. And you mentioned the weird incident you had with people telling you kind of not to talk about this, Caz.
Yeah.
Ben Emlyn Jones, I remember asking him, and it was a few shows ago, maybe maybe over a year or so now. But I always kind of ask Ben about things like, have you ever had any hassle covering any stories? And I was being more in general terms about the whole kind of stuff that Ben covers. And he says, you know, the only time I think something like that happened was just before he was due to go to Denmark. And he was going to make a presentation about the Pentyrch case. And he had got a phone call from somebody, very well-to-do voice, very posh sounding, and just kind of hinting to Ben, perhaps he wouldn't want to talk about the subject he had planned to talk about at the conference. Now that, for me, that's uber weird. And Gary, you were telling me before the show you didn't really get into it, but you've had threats yourself, right? You've been people trying to put you off covering this case.
Yeah, usually troll comments and basically people sending me stupid messages, you know. But the one time that Ben was getting that funny phone call, I was getting some funny messages from people asking me where I lived, and they were using my IP address to try and track and locate me, like. And I can't remember exactly what the message was. He says, "Could you get back in touch with us so we can come and find you or something?" And I'm like,
that's weird.
What does that mean? What does that mean? You know,
and I've had military as well, weren't they? Photographs of.
Oh yeah, definitely military. Yeah, a picture of a gentleman standing in front of it. The weirdest thing is I've had the comments, and I've had some weird things happen to my hard drives over the last 3 years. I think I've gone through like 3 computers and 5 hard drives.
Yeah,
I'm pretty good at maintaining my machine.
Yep.
You know, I mean, Caz, you had your hard drive hacked, your emails hacked, your Facebook hacked, your accounts hacked. Dave lost stuff off their WhatsApp and their phones and their emails. My computers have gone kind of funny. I've put so much protection on it just to try and keep people off me, like, you know. But I've had some really strange, freaky things, something that shouldn't have happened. I've lost a lot of information from this, but luckily I've been able to keep a good portion of it, enough to at least put us. One of the things I lost was a long list of original comments and people who were posting stuff on the wave, you know. I managed to find some of it, but the other lot went missing. And one particular person, I'm sure Caz can talk to this, he did mention something about seeing the green object getting shot at.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to bring something up, Kev. Because I know I bet some money that some people are asking about how did the military know that this thing was coming. Now, this is something that people need to understand, right? The ZZ418 plane, the one that's on the iStar, the Beechcraft aircraft, right? When that thing came back in for a refit, they put a FLIR system on it, forward-looking infrared, but there's stuff inside there, right, that is so secretive. It's more secretive than the E3. Nobody knows what's in there. Now, the only thing I've been able to find out, and that's just on one of the things, right, it's got this fancy radar system that goes out sideways and can map and detect all kinds of temperature, electromagnetic, and radiation changes, ground penetration stuff. I mean, this thing is kitted up with some things we don't even understand, and it begins to work. So the only thing I can say is the 2 planes must have been in that area. They knew it was coming. I'm sorry, but they knew it was coming. Why would you circle for 3 days and nights? And we actually put a cost on this, didn't we, Caz? What was the cost we put on it? Something like 50,000 quid?
No, it's £20,000 per shift, and each plane can fly for approximately 8 hours. So that's 3 shifts.
That's around 300
grand. £60,000 a day. for these 2 aircraft for 3 days and 3 nights for no particular reason, having no particular place to go, and no acknowledgement for 2 years and 8 months that those planes were even here. When we asked the Ministry of Defence, they said they had no information. And 2 years and 8 months later, we had a Section 26 not in the public interest.
Oh, get this as well.
I think it's very much in the public interest.
Get this as well, right? I was able to find those radar returns off of a site called planefinder.net. Now, you could go back on their history player 7 to 10 years, I believe, and see what planes were flying in the area, especially on the ADS-B or ABS. ADS radar tracker anyway, not the military one, but if they were transponders on the ADS-B, I believe is what it's called, you'll find it. And you could go back 7 years, 8 years, easy, no problem, no subscriptions, no nothing. Then suddenly when this case starts getting talked about, do you know what then? They change it to a subscription, you can only get it for 1 year.
Wow.
And on top of that, right, I've got a sounding chart. Let me see if I can bring it up when I'm talking, and I'll screen share it if I can. But there's a weather state. There's a place that I know of, right? They've got them all over the country. They send up weather balloons every 12 hours, right? So that's afternoon and the change of morning, 12 a.m., 12 p.m. And I don't know if I can find it now. I wish I remember this, but that's got missing data on it too, right? It gets to the point where we get to the 25th, 26th, and according to a friend of mine who knows about it, the weather shows an inversion like that. In other words, there's a layer in the atmosphere, right, which suddenly experiences some sort of shift in temperature or humidity or pressure, and just causes that weird shift. Happens right before the midnight of the 26th, before it comes into the 26th, and it's gone. The information is gone.
Caz, anything you want to... Yeah.
There has been a systematic deletion, suppression, and shadow banning of information on this. We're lucky we got what we got now, because,
the cover-up continues.
Yeah.
Even today, the cover-up continues. The lies continue. The only person who hasn't lied is me.
No, yeah,
my testimony has stayed the same. In fact, I've been slated because my testimony is so the same. And I said, well, I can only tell it one way. It only happened one way. How else am I going to say it? And as I said before, I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm here to inform people. This happened and this was real. And, I took 3 polygraphs to prove that what I said, was true. And some people would argue that a polygraph isn't good enough. But, the federal and state Canadian governments use it. The US police use it. Our government use it. They test their staff quite regularly. This has over a 96% accuracy. I'm not militarily trained. I had to jump through so many hoops to be able to take this polygraph in the first place. You can't be on medication. I actually tried the 3 best companies in Europe first, and when they found out the subject matter, they refused to test me. And I had one guy that threatened to fail me before he'd even tested me. He said, Caz, you're not going to get the answers you're looking for.
I heard that phone call.
All right? That's how difficult it was.
I heard that phone call.
I employed Carrie Austin, and I didn't know it was Carrie Austin. When I first employed her, I actually refused to discuss the content of my lie detector with anyone. But the certificate is real. This is not a fake. This is the, wrong way. The real McCoy.
Yep.
That is the seal on the bottom there.
Tell them how many questions you had to answer before you answered your 3 questions, Caz, because a lot of people are not getting this right. You had to answer 15 profile or preliminary questions before you got the main questions, yeah?
Yeah, there were 15 profile questions and 3 main questions. But they weren't as straightforward as that. They weren't 15 profile questions and then the 3 main questions. The 15 profile questions were mixed with the 3. So they came at random times throughout the 15 profile questions to get a reaction from you. There is no, you'll have the 15 profile questions. Is your name Caz? Are we in Cardiff? And all of that. The questions were thrown in at random places. And when Carrie read my statement to begin with, she read it and she was quite flippant about it. It's quite intimidating, the area. They've got cameras on you everywhere. And she kept impressing upon me that this had to be 100% accurate, that if I'd exaggerated in any shape or form, that it would impact upon my test and prove to be a lie. So, of course, once I'd passed, her hands were physically shaking when she read my statement for the second time, because she knew then I told the truth. And she looked up and she said to me, "Is this going to go mainstream?" I said, "Well, I don't know, because I did the lie detector primarily for my doctors, because this did make me ill for some time. And it started off as little things to begin with, like suddenly becoming allergic to certain coatings on tablets and becoming anaphylactic when I was never anaphylactic before. So, and it was an accumulation of things that were happening over the months that accumulated into New Year's Eve 2016, 2017, when I nearly died. So I needed something to show my doctors so that they could understand what had happened to me. And I needed them to take me seriously. I knew it would help the investigation, but primarily I did it for myself. I think that's the bottom line.
So any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with, Caz, Gary, before we wrap this up today? And again, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone. Caz, if it wasn't for you, I really suspect we probably wouldn't know too much about this case, because like Gary said, it sounds like the plot to a movie until you start to actually line up all the documents with your testimony, supporting evidence, all the other testimony. And again, if it wasn't for somebody as brave as you, I honestly don't think anyone would have heard about this most important of events that took place.
I don't feel brave, Kev. I really don't. But I would say to anybody out there that knows anything at all, no matter how small or insignificant you think it might be, it actually helps a great deal. You know, to know, for example, that all the car alarms were set off because of the kinetic wave. It doesn't sound much, but it proves there was a kinetic wave and not a fake incendiary device, which is what we were told it was. Any witnesses, please contact me. I will keep your details strictly confidential, as I have with every other witness. There is no one in the world would be able to torture me. I would give you a pseudonym so that no one would know your real names. You wouldn't even have to tell me your names. But please, I know there are witnesses out there. I've spoken to you. Please come forward. Please give me a statement, because everything matters. I'm going to the government with this. This is serious, and this affects us all. And this certainly isn't a joke. Gary?
Yeah, I'm going to be with Caz on that when we're going to the Senate. We're going to make sure people know about this. This clearly is the most important case that's come along in the last 20, 30 years in Britain, since Rendlesham Forest anyway. You know, whatever they're doing, it is clearly putting us at risk. And I don't think we can just sit back and ignore it anymore. I mean, if that craft that they shot at had hit a house, what would have been the situation then? You know, when that Apache opened fire on something, I know it opened on fire on that green object, you know, all the evidence points to that. And, you know, whenever there's a reaction, there's always an effect, you know, and what's the effect of this going to be? You know, and as Caz said, there are many other people who I know have gone through many other cases, many other situations, maybe not as incredible as this, but have impacted their life just as equally. And it's about bloody time, you know. These people got support, help, and stopped being ridiculed, attacked, threatened, or, you know, getting threatened with car accidents, you know, because it's not bloody fair. You know, these people don't ask for it. It happens to them, and then when it impacts their lives like this, they're just told to shut up and get on with it, you know. And as Caz has said, you know, this impacts us all. It does. It's the way forward for humanity. We've got to learn what's going on here. You can't just keep being in the dark, you know. And, you know, I mean, I know there's a lot of other stuff we didn't get through. I mean, I was seeing the comments, and I know somebody was asking about the dead ponies up on the trail. You know, there was some animals that were dumped off in an area that showed sign of mutilation that is similar to the cattle's. that have been reported by Linda Moulton Howe. Now, I don't know any more than that. We did follow something of it, but the RSPCA have since gone quiet on it, and nothing has happened since. I don't know if there was mutilation or whether it was just a natural cause of their...
No, there was another part of...
Sorry, Kev, I don't mean to interrupt. You know, what's the word I'm looking for? The decomposition or something? I don't know. I'm not a vet. I can't doctor anything. I can't speak on that.
There was another part to that question about the shoes as well that had been found or something.
Yeah, there was a pair of trainers there, but I don't know what's anything about that.
Yeah,
I think that was a red herring.
Yeah, probably.
I don't understand why somebody would dump ponies and dump trainers. I think somebody's messing around there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, I'm the biggest skeptic you're going to find on this. I came to Caz with an open mind, and I'm a UFO researcher, but I'm not going to believe something like this unless I can prove it. And I can. Caz can prove it. We can all prove it. You know, I mean, I can't take you to the field and say, oh, look, there it is. You know, smile. You know, I can't do that. I know the military have got video footage of it. I know the satellite images have got images of it. I know there's documentation laying around somewhere. I bet if the military and the government were forced to flipping confront this issue, they would crack like a softball leg or something. You know, they would just... You can't deny it. They were there. They knew. And they know. They keep denying us in the Section 26. They've got this information, but they won't tell us. They know about the red and green orbs. They know about the pulsing lights. They know about the large explosions. They know about all the other freaky stuff.
They know about the pyramid.
They know about the pyramid. They know about it all. The Pentagon are getting ready next month to release a report admitting UFOs are real. Let that sink in. UFOs are real. That means all the things you laughed at, all the things you ridiculed, all the things you made fun of, all the flipping things that you said were crackpots are suddenly now reality.
I'm not laughing.
And that means now the even the things that with mutilations, military engagements, alien abductions, shall we say, you know, all the crazy paranormal events, are they now real too? Because they all tie into the UFO phenomena. They do. In what way, I don't know, but they tie in. They're connected. So if UFOs are real, all the other crazy shit that you thought was crazy is now real at some degree.
Well, this investigation is not over by a long way. As I say, we've got several FOIAs out. We are going to the Welsh Senate.
How about the military come forward? Or what a military whistleblower? Because I know you guys in the Apaches or in the E3 or in the flipping Lynx helicopters or the Chinooks or the people on the ground or the ones... God, this was a huge operation. I can't even begin to understand. But all I know is I could track 20 or so military aircraft from North England down here, jets, helicopters, planes, you know, they came ready to, I don't know if it was meant to go down as a confrontation, maybe it was an agreement of some kind. People keep asking about how the military know, maybe it was an arranged agreement, maybe it was something that went wrong. I don't bloody know. You know, you can't keep asking us those questions expecting those answers. All we know is that we can prove it was there. A witness saw it, who went through a polygraph, who's got something going on with the dermal waves, and we've got this electrical, magnetic, and Geiger counter radiation that makes no bloody sense. We've got all this covered up with the normal questions and procedures we got. And, you know, I'll leave links, you know,
Don't forget, it turned my hair white overnight. And
yes.
That is in the crash site video. You can see that for yourself. That is a fact. You know, this is not dyed. I've still got, you know, a little melon streak at the front here that never actually went back to a natural colour, you know. This is real.
Just a screenshot I could grab anyway of it. I did put it on before, but I'll show you again now. Compare Caz's hair colour to now.
Pepper, but,
so here it comes. Let's see if we got it. Hang on. I know you can't see it, but that's Caz's hair on the bottom there. Let's have a look, you know, compared to that.
It turned my hair white overnight.
You know?
Yep.
You know,
electromagnetic radiation or some form of radiation that just causes the biological system to go funny. I don't understand how it happens. It's an effect that's observable.
Wow. Well, I can't thank you both enough for your time here today. Coming on to share all of this. Again, we've missed a lot, but I want this to be a kind of launch pad for people. If you're just hearing about the Pentyrch UFO incident, Gary's on YouTube. He's also over on BitChute.
I'm not on YouTube. I'm on BitChute now.
Okay, and when Gary, I'm going to put this over on kevbakershow.com, and I'm going to include a lot of the links that'll take you to see some of the stuff that Gary and Caz have been talking about today. But I really want people to use your social media to get word about this out there. I've said to Caz, the best place to kind of be right now, if there is the levels of harassment that Caz and Gary are talking about here, the best place to hide is out in the open. And I'm pleased to hear that Caz and Gary are going to be going on other shows in the near future. There's a really good documentary here on YouTube as well. Like I say, over 250,000 views. It's absolutely brilliantly put together. You hear a lot more from Caz. Folks, check this out because, listen, we mentioned Rendlesham Forest a couple of times tonight. And I often say that's one of my favourite UFO kind of stories to look at. But this here is on a completely different level. And for me, it's one of the biggest UFO cases that not enough people know about. So I want to thank Caz. I want to thank Gary. And I want to thank all of you out there for taking the time out to listen to the testimony of Caz, to listen to the research of Gary. And now they need you. And we'll keep coming back and giving updates on this case because in the near future, Caz might need petitions putting together because this is why it's a different case as well. We're looking at people here that aren't just telling a story on YouTube, going around Project Camelot and all the usual kind of places. They're doing something in the real world about this. Gary's gone and got the documents. Caz has got this, I don't know whether to say tremendous or terrible account to share with people because this is somebody's life we're talking about. This isn't infotainment. This is somebody in the real world that's trying to make a difference. And you're probably wondering, well, how does it affect me? Well, Caz, why did it affect Caz? The point is it could affect anyone. And I find it really, really weird. And again, I'm just saying, Gary mentioned the fact we're getting ready for UFOs to be kind of declared. Yeah, we've known about them all the time over in America. And we pointed back to December 2017 when something really changed. Something made the Pentagon shift their attitude from total secrecy to we need to start telling people. That's only a year after what happened in Pentyrch. A year after potentially we attacked some craft from either another dimension, a different planet.
Going up.
Yep, exactly. I'm telling you folks, this has to be one of the most important UFO events that I've personally ever covered here on the show. And I couldn't do that without Caz, and I couldn't do that without Gary. And we need all of you now to share that far and wide. So with that said, guys, I'm going to shove on a bit of music. I'll put on the little thumbnail for the show, and then I'll give it 30 seconds, and I'll have a quick word with you on Skype afterwards, okay? So, folks, I'll be back tomorrow with Freaky Friday, but please share this far and wide. And don't thank me in the chat room. Thank Caz, thank Gary. They're the ones that are putting the work.
Don't thank me.
Yeah, well, I tell you, without you guys,
everybody.
listen.
And it affects everybody in their homes right now. Whatever they did that night was illegal, and it affects us all. Because as a human being, I don't want to be represented that way. It has to stop. All of this blowing these craft up. We can't tar them all with the same brush. They're not all hostile. In fact, the Ministry of Defence has said they're not hostile.
Now, on that point, folks, let me just say thank you for tuning in again today. Big thank you to Caz, big thank you to Gary, and please share this far and wide.